It's Tuesday, November 5th. It's Election Day, right now on this special edition of CNN This Morning.
We are optimistic and we are excited about what we can do together.
We do not have to live this way. But what have they done? Everything's a disaster.
Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, two visions for America. And today, the voters get to decide who wins the White House. Plus,
those threats include criminal threats, such as threats to election workers.
bracing for trouble, the FBI manning a command center to protect voters, the polls, and the people who work there. And the balance of power at stake, what it will take for Democrats to win the House and Republicans to flip the Senate. All right, 5 a.m. here on the East Coast. Look at that. They lit up the White House on this election day. They actually don't always do that at this hour of the day. It tells you something about what's unfolding here in America, across the country. Good morning, everyone. I'm Casey Hunt. It's wonderful to have you with us. It's here, finally. The first election day polls opening right now in some places across Vermont. The final day to cast your ballot in the 2024 election. It's the start, potentially, of a new era for our nation. Kamala Harris and Donald Trump zeroing in on the states that could secure them their spot, their home in that House that we just saw. For Harris, it's been all about Pennsylvania. She spent Election Day Eve barnstorming the Commonwealth in search of every last vote.
Hi.
The vice president even knocking on doors herself to reach voters in Pennsylvania. Notably absent again from her speeches Monday, her opponent's name. Harris made her final major address in this campaign. It's a race she started just 107 days ago at the top of the ticket. Last night, she was on the steps of Philadelphia's Museum of Art. You may remember those stairs made famous by the movie Rocky.
It's good to be back in the city of brotherly love, where the foundation of our democracy was forged. And here at these famous steps, a tribute to those who start as the underdog and climb to victory. It's my pledge to you that if you give me a chance to fight on your behalf as president, there is nothing in the world that will stand in my way. We finish as we started, with optimism, with energy, with joy, knowing that we, the people, have the power to shape our future.
So, Donald Trump closing out his final day on the campaign trail, striking a dark and ominous tone, painting a dark picture of America if he doesn't return to the White House. Trump appearing at rallies in North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and finishing up in Michigan, taking the stage just as the clock struck midnight on the East Coast, once again attacking his political opponents and making baseless accusations about cheating in the election.
Who's going to approve open borders with criminals pouring into our country by the millions? No, they have to cheat. They have to cheat, and they do it very well, actually. Crazy, horrible human being, Nancy Pelosi, who cheats like hell. She's a crooked person. She's a bad person. Evil. She's an evil, sick, crazy bad. Oh, no. It starts with a B, but I won't say it.
So the choice on display, it's as stark as ever, and it's your choice. You get to make it today. Joining me now to talk about all of it, Sabrina Rodriguez. She is national political reporter for The Washington Post, and she has been out on the campaign trail with the candidates in these final days. Sabrina, good morning. Wonderful to have you on the show. What did you see on the trail yesterday as things were closing out here? What are you looking for today, Election Day?
Well, Casey, we finally made it to this election day.
America finally made it, Sabrina. It's a collective. We got there. We got there. Go ahead.
But the closing message, I think, is one that we've seen throughout. There's such a stark difference between these two candidates. I think it was notable. The backdrop at Kamala Harris's rallies yesterday said "a president for all" and "vote for freedom," and that was really the closing message that she had for Americans in her Allentown stop. And Pittsburgh and heading to Philadelphia. I mean, she gave similar speeches, similar closing speeches. And in it, one of the things that was notable was her saying, you know, who is that helped her get to this day? And one of the things that she highlighted was Republicans who made that decision that they care more about the Constitution than their party and have split to go vote for her. And I think on the other side of that, then we were hearing Donald Trump with, you know, a message that was very filled with grievances, filled with blaming, you know, Democrats and blaming Biden and Harris for the state of the country. He, you know, the picture that he paints of the United States today is one that is in chaos, that is overrun by immigrants that have come into the country, that, you know, has a horrible economy. And I mean, statistics and data and just living in this country tells us that it is not chaos and it is not, you know, as horrible as he may paint it to be. So really, it showed this stark contrast, and I guess the question today will ultimately be how voters, who they've bought in on that message.
Yeah, I mean, it's the great part of it, right? I mean, you and I, reporters, pundits, can look, try to divine what's going to happen, but the voters have done nothing if not surprise us in recent election cycles. And certainly, I feel like I've learned enough to get out of the prediction business. But here's what I will ask you. There aren't very many people in America who get a chance to do what you're doing this election cycle. You've attended rallies for both of these candidates. You've gotten kind of a finger feel for how each lays out their events. I'm sure you've talked to sources in both campaigns. What is your evaluation about how each camp is feeling heading into Election Day? I mean, you can often kind of pick some of that up when you're out on the trail in the final days about how they're feeling and what that says about what we might see and how we might see the results play out tonight.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think a week ago, you'd hear, you know, Trump campaign officials and Trump supporters themselves kind of talking with more confidence. There was this feeling of momentum, this perception. And of course, some of those things, again, can just be, you know, the narrative that's going out at that point. But I think there was a lot more confidence being projected from the Trump side a week ago. And really with that Madison Square Garden rally and sort of the racist and demeaning insults that were said at that rally really kind of shifted a little bit of momentum towards Democrats. Again, I think some people get a little overconfident and then it's like, oh, now we completely are on a different page. But I think it just reminded us how close this election is going to be. And from talking to voters, I think it's sort of this debate, you know, some of them, and especially those who are have been more undecided or just didn't tune in until the election toward the end, you know, some feel frustrated with the economy. Some feel, you know, like they don't like the direction of where the country is going. And that has maybe made them flirt with Donald Trump as their candidate of choice. But then they hear some of the comments that he's made and there's sort of this anxiety around, okay, maybe they think policy-wise he'd be good, but there is some concern about character and values. So ultimately, I think it will be really interesting to see where those folks who were undecided to the end, which way they actually break.
Yeah, I mean, that's of course what Kamala Harris is counting on here in the final stretch. There was some evidence in the late New York Times polling that perhaps those voters were breaking for her. But as you point out, there had been a lot of confidence on the part of the Trump team as those national polls tightened up throughout October. So here we go. We're finally going to learn all of the answers. Sabrina Rodriguez, get some rest today. We're all in for a long night tonight. Thank you so much for being here. All right, coming up on this special edition of CNN This Morning, controlling Congress, why Republicans believe they're on track to flip the Senate, and Democrats are optimistic about retaking the House. Plus, polls opening soon in blue wall states, how Republicans are hoping to paint the wall red, and it's all about the math in the Electoral College, how Harris and Trump hope to get on the road to 270.
And I will stop the invasion of criminals coming across our border. I will strengthen our military. I will restore peace in the world.
Then we finish as we started, with optimism, with energy, with joy.
All right, welcome back. Kamala Harris making her final campaign stop in Pennsylvania last night. Last night, Harris spoke directly to Keystone State voters.
This could be one of the closest races in history. Every single vote matters. Encourage folks to make their voices heard, because we need everyone to vote in Pennsylvania, and you will decide the outcome of this election, Pennsylvania.
All right, joining us now, CNN's Omar Jimenez, who's at our voter desk. Omar, they're of course called the Blue Wall states. If you talk to Ron Brownstein, who says he coined the term, he'll claim they're the ones that fell out of the blue wall, but semantics. It's Pennsylvania, it's Michigan, it's Wisconsin. What are you seeing?
Yeah. So the blue wall states, as they're known, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, they're states Trump won in 2016, then Biden flipped in 2020. But the key here is that 44 electoral votes are up for grabs between these states. So let's take a look at Pennsylvania. 19 electoral votes, the most of any battleground state. Polls open at 7 a.m. Eastern time, along with most of the Eastern time zone. So that'll help officially kick off Election Day. But as you see, almost 1.8 million absentee and mail-in votes have been returned so far. And if you dig in, women outpaced men in the early vote by over 10%. But overall, we're only talking about 20% of total registered voters here in this early vote period. So we've got a lot of vote to look out for today. That said, let's take a look at some of the counties that we'll be keeping an eye on, and especially critical when it comes to the margins. Philadelphia County, but also the suburbs with big populations. Montgomery, Bucks, Chester, and Delaware, the collar counties as they're known. They all went Biden in 2020. Same story when you head west to Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. And then, of course, in the top left there, the northwest, there's Erie, which Biden flipped in 2020 by less than 2,000 votes. We're expecting first reports of mail ballots shortly after polls close, but the Secretary of State there has stressed they have never had final official results on Election Day, so patience, people. And remember, in 2020, the projection here triggered the call for the presidency. Could play that role this time around. All right, let's go to Michigan. Polls also open here starting at 7 a.m. Eastern time. So far, over 3 million Michiganders have voted either early or absentee. That brings the total so far to about 44% among their active voter rolls. Again, before we even got to today. And same story here. So far, women have outpaced men by about 10 percentage points. And here, though, we're going to keep our eye on the population centers. Wayne County, home to Detroit. More people live there than anywhere else in the state. Really looking at the margins, Biden won 68% of the vote there in 2020. Also, Macomb County in the suburbs, which went for Trump in 2016 and 2020, but Obama in 2012. And in the western part of the state, Muskegon County outside Grand Rapids, it went to Biden by just 500 votes in 2020 out of the more than 90,000 cast there. The Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, has said she hopes to have final results by midday Wednesday. And then finally in Wisconsin, polls open starting at 8 a.m. Eastern time. A little more than 1.5 million ballots have been returned already. Women there also outpaced men here in early vote by around 9 percentage points. And then when you look at the map, same deal, keeping an eye on the margins in Milwaukee and Dane counties, where Democrats typically win big, but also some of the suburbs in Milwaukee. We projected the race here for president within 24 hours of polls closing last time around. They close at 9 p.m. Eastern time here. And when you look at all of these in total, remember, the key thing here is we've got 44 electoral votes up for grabs. Could make a huge difference, maybe the difference. Casey.
Of course, every single one counts. Omar Jimenez for us. Omar, so grateful to have you with us this morning. Thank you so much for that. All right, let's check on your Election Day weather, and it's going to be a wet one for voters in some of the key battleground states. Let's get to the weatherman, Van Dam. Derek, our meteorologist, what are you seeing across the country as voters head to the polls?
A collective sigh of relief. That's what I'm seeing. No, it's a big day, and a lot of people impacted by some rough weather, namely heavier rainfall. So the severe weather threat that we've had the past couple of days has waned, but that's now resulted in more excessive rainfall across the nation's midsection. So we're looking right here along this cold front that's producing significant amount of precipitation at the moment. So let's bring you into Michigan and Grand Rapids, my home state, my hometown, getting walloped by some heavier rainfall. And as you head to the polls this morning in Chicago, you'll also feel the rain as you head out the door. So grab a rain jacket, umbrella, prepare to spend some time in some of the voting lines. Now, St. Louis, that's where we have a flash flood warning. I'll show you you that in just one moment. Look at the rain moving over the same locations for the past several hours, and it's starting to accumulate. That's why the National Weather Service has issued these flash flood warnings. You can see that shaded of red, parts of Missouri into western sections of Arkansas. In fact, that's where we have our slight risk of excessive rain that could lead to flash flooding. And timing things out as you head to the polls this morning. Again, you saw the wet weather on the current radar, but through this afternoon, if you're maybe taking a lunch break to head out to the polls, still more wet weather. St. Louis, Chicago to Minneapolis, southward into Memphis, a few showers and thunderstorms with this system moving through. And then it starts to lose its punch as it advances eastward. We're not going to see the excessive rainfall threat as we head into the overnight hours, but it's going to change things across the southeast, but that's for the second half of the week. But here's your exact forecast for heading to the polls this morning. Places like the battleground state of North Carolina, temperatures in the lower to middle 50s, but warming to the upper 70s by the afternoon. Philadelphia into Pennsylvania, lower 70s for you. Dry conditions. Atlanta, you'll stay dry as well. And then into Detroit, Milwaukee to Houston, you can see where the weather will potentially impact your voting day weather. And then across the western parts of the U.S., a storm system starting to drop into the Great Basin. Could bring some snow to the higher elevation locations, but places like Phoenix to Vegas, you stay dry. Seattle, you'll stay dry and relatively cool. Casey,
I was going to say,
happy
Derek,
voting day.
I think I just want a blue wall forecast in the future. So we can just do Michigan, Wisconsin, because they're the ones that are going to be dealing with the rain. Okay. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Happy Election Day to you. All right. Okay. Still coming up here on CNN this morning, they say, or they used to say anyway, that all politics is local. And here's the reality. A handful of House races could tip the balance of power in Washington today. Plus, there would be no blue wall without, he's already made a cameo on our show this morning, Ron Brownstein. He is the man who first coined that term. He's coming up next.
And Wisconsin will be. Look, you know the math. It's the blue wall. The blue wall must hold. The blue wall must hold, and when it does, we can start improving lives for people.
Kamala Harris, she is a disaster, and we're not going to let her become president of the United States.
All right, 5:24 a.m. here on the East Coast. A live look at Detroit, Michigan. That's a key battleground state. Both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, obviously, hoping to take the lead with voters in the Wolverine state. The higher the turnout is in that city, the better off Kamala Harris is going to be. Good morning, everyone. I'm Casey Hunt. It's wonderful to have you with us. On the road to 270, both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris's campaigns think they have multiple paths to get them where they need to go. The so-called blue wall states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, it's the most straightforward route for Kamala Harris, and both campaigns are making closing pitches in those states.
And Wisconsin will be. Look, you know the math. It's the blue wall. The blue wall must hold. The blue wall must hold, and when it does, we can start improving lives for people.
Hello to Michigan. We're going to do some great things from Michigan. If we win Michigan, we win the whole thing, the whole thing.
Obviously, there are 7 battleground states across the map, but those, of course, very much in focus here. Joining us now, CNN senior political analyst, senior editor for The Atlantic, Ron Brownstein. Ron, good morning.
Casey,
Wonderful to see you.
Happy
I know
Election
this is
Day.
Happy Election Day. You and I are going to, in about 24 hours, we're both going to be sitting on set in New York together overnight, thinking we may still be counting votes at that point. Just break it down. I mean, what are you seeing here as we wrap this up, as voters actually head to the polls?
You know, so many things have changed since Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden, but we kind of end up in the same place. I mean, she's obviously more competitive than Biden was in the Sun Belt because she has recovered a lot of the ground that he was losing among Latino voters in particular and black voters. But it doesn't look like she has recovered all of it. And so the Sun Belt states still look a little harder for her. And as you said, the most straightforward path for Harris, as it was for Biden, is by sweeping the 3 states that I say are the former blue wall states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, because they fell out of the original blue wall. And those are states where Democrats traditionally have been able to run a little better with white voters than they do in most other parts of the country. Now, you know, people know they have voted the same way in every presidential election since 1980. 1980, except one. They've also voted the same way for governor in every election over the past 30 years, except one in 2014. And if we are talking about Michigan and Pennsylvania, the level of convergence is almost unimaginable. They've deviated in the presidential race once since 1940 and only 3 times since the Civil War. So, you know, past performance, no guarantee of future results. Pennsylvania could be tougher for the Democrats than the other two, but they are so similar culturally, economically, and demographically that there is a reason why they have tended to move as a herd.
Ron, how would you explain, you know, and look, my family's from Michigan originally. I grew up in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time kind of turning this over in my head. There is a difference. There's a reason, there have to be reasons. Pennsylvania's closer than Michigan, at least in the polling, or why sort of some of the fundamentals seem to be a little bit different. What is the difference?
Well, historically, Wisconsin has seemed the toughest because the white share of the vote is higher and the minority share is smaller, and the non-college white share is highest in Wisconsin, right? So about 80% of the vote in Michigan and Pennsylvania are whites. In Wisconsin, it's 90, and nearly 60% of the voters in Wisconsin historically have been whites without a college degree, who are the absolute foundation of the GOP in the Trump era. But, you know, the white-collar parts of Wisconsin have moved so much toward the Democrats that it's kind of leapfrogged, I think, you know, switched places with Pennsylvania. I think the key in Pennsylvania is that Democrats have struggled more in the mid-sized cities than they do in Wisconsin or Michigan, and I think that's largely because Western PA, in some ways, the industrial employment base has been hollowed out even more than we saw in Wisconsin and Michigan. But, you know, there's so much focus in the final weeks of the campaign on whether Harris can hold down her losses in the parts of these states that are trending Republican. I think it may actually be more important whether she can maximize her strengths. If you look at the big 6 counties, Allegheny, Philadelphia, the 4 collar counties in Pennsylvania, you look at the 6 largest counties in Michigan, or you look at Madison, which is Dane, plus Milwaukee, minus the suburbs of Milwaukee. In all of them, Casey, the improvement that Biden made over Clinton from 16 to 20 accounted for all of the overall improvement Democrats made in the state. So, you know, if Harris can run up the margins in the big places enough, I'm not sure there are enough voters elsewhere in the states, any of these states, to overcome it. And so I'm going to be watching not only whether she can hold down the losses, but whether she can really blow out the doors in these white-collar, racially diverse, growing, prosperous places that have been trending toward Democrats in the Trump era.
Yeah, really fascinating way to think about it. So, Ron, I want to ask you about women. And not just the gender gap as we traditionally think about it, but the big question I have here is whether or not the polling is going to accurately reflect the way women voters are going to be behaving, are going to be voting, are going to be coming out in the first presidential election since Roe versus Wade fell. And especially in that Iowa poll from Ann Seltzer that we saw that sort of shook things up over the weekend. I mean, I've talked to countless people that I trust who say they'd be really floored if Iowa actually moves, but they're really interested to see how particularly older white women seemed to be conducting themselves in this election. What do you make of that, and what are you watching for on this score?
Yeah, well, first of all, you know, you and I have gone deep dives into all the different demographic divisions that are affecting this election. Certainly college versus non is really important. Urban versus rural is really important. Age is really important, as you're citing. But there is kind of a pretty direct through line here, which is that women are a majority of the voters in all 7 swing states and nationally. Women have cast a majority of votes in every election since 1980. And what that means across the swing states is that Donald Trump is going to have to win men by more than Kamala Harris wins women. It's kind of a very simple rule. Now, that's doable in some places, particularly in the South, where a lot of white women are, you know, culturally conservative evangelicals. But this is fundamentally his challenge, in particularly, I think, in the former blue wall states. Can he win men by more than she wins women? What we saw in 2022 was that Biden's advantages among women in those states was not the ceiling for Democrats. Democratic gubernatorial candidates in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and for that matter, Arizona, ran better among college-educated women and non-college-educated women than Biden had 2 years earlier. The non-college women still look like a problem for Democrats. They're economically squeezed, maybe less motivated by abortion. But you could see record support for Harris among college-educated women. And as you say, older women are, in many polls have been tilting more Democratic. Again, it is a simple math equation. If women vote for Harris in sufficient numbers in those states, it is going to be really hard for Trump to overcome that, because women are somewhere between 52 to 56% of the voters in 2020 in all 7 of the key battleground states.
Yeah, really, really interesting. So let's watch a little bit of what David Plouffe had to say about their path to 270. Just watch it. We'll talk about it.
Okay.
It's very important that we have multiple pathways to 270. And, just a couple hours ago, reviewing all the early vote data, what we're projecting for Election Day, how we think undecideds are breaking, we have a credible pathway to all 7 states tomorrow night to go into Kamala Harris's column. But we believe they're all going to be close.
David Plouffe with the look of a campaign operative in the very last day of
the
race,
yeah,
the
man.
5 o'clock shadow.
Just get me over the finish line.
Maybe he'll get some sleep in like a few days. Unclear.
Yeah.
But let's talk about what he said there, that they think that they have a credible path to all 7 of these states. And let's talk about how it might go tonight, because the early states we're going to get are going to be Sunbelt ones, North Carolina and Georgia, that could give us some early indicators.
Yeah, that might be true. Most Democrats, and I'm sure you agree, still believe there's a significant fall off between the 3 Rust Belt states, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and their chances in any of the Sun Belt states except for maybe Nevada. Obviously, if she wins North Carolina or Georgia, that is a sign that this is probably going to go her way. I mean, the way one Democrat expressed it to me yesterday was that, you're going to need a little swell in the tide at the end to push either of those states over the top. We have seen that before, right? I mean, we have seen, close states all break the same way. I mean, and it might be even more surprising if they don't. But, generally speaking, the Sun Belt states have looked a little harder for her. They looked a lot harder for Biden. And if either Georgia or North Carolina go her way, it's probably a very good sign. I think Democrats are still putting most of their chips on Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and probably, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania is the order of their optimism on there. But again, just look at the 6 biggest, the 6 big counties in Pennsylvania: Philadelphia, and Allegheny, which is Pittsburgh, the 4 suburban counties. Hillary Clinton won them by about
Chester, Montgomery, Delaware, and
votes.
Bucks, yes.
Right, the 4 suburban counties, Montgomery, Delaware, Chester, and Bucks. Hillary Clinton won them by about 780,000 votes. Biden pushed that up to about 910. Can Harris go even further? I mean, you would think post-Dobbs, post-January 6th, she might not only could, but may have to go even further in those places. Same thing. I don't think they've hit the ceiling in Dane County or Oakland County in Michigan or Kent. And in all those places, she may have to go further, but she may be very capable of going further, particularly with the potential of further gains than we saw even in 2020 among those college-educated women.
This political encyclopedia that is your brain is why we love having you, Ron, and I'm so excited you're going to be on with us overnight.
I will see you tonight. Yeah.
So I will see you soon. Thank you. All right, the White House, not the only prize up for grabs on Election Day. Control of the House and the Senate, of course, are critical. An uphill battle to hold on to their razor-thin 51-49 majority in the Senate. They're vulnerable, particularly in several states. There are, of course, 34 of the 100 seats in play today, a third of the Senate up every 2 years. Republicans are optimistic that they can flip at least 2 Senate seats. Democrats are hopeful they can retake the House. They'll have to flip at least 4 seats. As you know, all 435 House seats are up for grabs today. Let's bring in John Bresnahan, co-founder of Punchbowl News. Brez, good morning. No no one I'd rather talk to about this morning than you. What are people telling you? How are they feeling? It does seem like the Senate is gone for Republicans. I'm curious, what you think about how far, and I'm curious what you think about the House.
Let's start in the Senate. The Democrats are immediately going to lose in West Virginia with the retirement of Joe Manchin, so that's one Republican pickup right away. Then Montana, Senator John Tester faces a really tough race. All the polling shows him down, so that would be 2 seats right there for Republicans, and that would be a majority. The question is, do they pick up seats in Ohio, which is, Sherry Brown is running there. Then you have Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Not only presidential races, but big, huge Senate races, which are all in the margin of error. Right now, there was a poll out yesterday in Ohio that showed Brown losing. He's been narrowly up, but it's a very close race. I mean, if Republicans pick up Ohio, that's 52 for them. That's that's a good solid majority. That's a good night for them. Now, Nebraska is a problem for them. There's an independent, Dan Osborne, running in Nebraska, who's leading or tied with Republican Deb Fischer. If Osborne somehow wins and then he caucuses with Senate Democrats, that's a huge gain for them. That's an enormous win for them. So there's a lot of play. And again, we don't, Ron was talking about, your previous guest, Ron Brownstein, was talking about, how does Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin go? And again, there's Senate races there. If Harris were to win those or Trump were to win those, they're very likely, there's a real good chance those Senate races could follow that way. So so much depends. Is interacting with the presidential level on the Senate side.
Well, so speaking of that, Brez, one of the things that we've noticed here is just how many of these Democratic Senate candidates are not just kind of distancing themselves from Kamala Harris, but in many cases trying to show that they would embrace Donald Trump. I want you to watch. This is a series of ads from some of these states that you just talked about. Watch.
Casey bucked Biden to protect fracking, and he sided with Trump to end NAFTA.
Tammy Baldwin got President Trump to sign her Made in America bill.
I'm voting for John Tester.
John got over 20 bills signed into law by President Trump.
Sherrod Brown is fighting back. He wrote a bill that Donald Trump signed to crack down on drugs at the border.
So in Ohio, it's pretty easy to explain. What do you make of that?
No, I mean, look, this is reality. They have to save themselves. I mean, Biden was unpopular. He was unpopular. If Biden had been the nominee here, there's no question in my mind that this would be a much bigger night for Senate Republicans, or potentially a much bigger night for Senate Republicans. Now, Harris has given them a fighting chance in all these states. I mean, Pennsylvania is probably the one difference where Biden on the ticket would help Casey more than having Harris on the ticket. Even Dave McCormick, the Republican, admitted that to one of our reporters, that having Harris rather than Biden was a plus for him. Now, there are some places where they've kind of wrapped their arms a little bit around Harris. Jackie Rosen in Nevada has tried to play it both ways. She's tried to play, I'm supporting Trump, but she was at a Harris event the other day. So, you can't run that far, not nowadays.
Yeah, although she's pretty comfortable. She's more comfortable than these other candidates, I will say, in Nevada.
Yeah, exactly. Ruben Gallego in Arizona was with Harris when she was in Nevada. So there are some of them who are doing it. But yeah, you're right. They're definitely trying to play, look, I am bipartisan. I am beyond party. I would work with whoever is president of the United States.
Yeah. So, Brez, let's talk about the House, because this is one that, look, we might not know for weeks, depending on how close this is, because of some of the races in California and New York and kind of the debacle that has been counting in those places in recent election cycles. But, where's your head? What's your bet? And how are your sources feeling on each side about their chances?
Democrats feel pretty good about it right now. They only have to pick up 4 seats to take the House. They have several seats up in play in New York. There's 5 seats in play. The Republicans won a bunch of them in 2022, helped give them the majority. I spent some time with House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. He's talking about picking up at least 2 or 3 of those seats. There's seats they're defending in Pennsylvania they feel good about. There's Don Davis's seat in North Carolina. It's a big race. But remember, they also there are majority districts that they can pick up in Alabama and Louisiana, and those are 2 that they'll get. And, they're defending in Pennsylvania, Democrats. They're defending in Michigan. There's a couple open seats. So, we could know fairly early by tomorrow, we could know by the end of the night whether or not Democrats will have a real chance of getting a majority. Again, as you noted, there are 4 or 5 races in California, and California can take 2 weeks to, or more to, certify races. John Duarte's race in California didn't certify until December in 2022. So, those could take a while. If it comes down to 1 or 2 races, we could really be on a knife's edge.
How do we get them to get on that, Brez? I mean, come on. It's 2024. Let's get with it. With the counting.
Well, mail-in voting and mail-in voting. That's the way they do it. They don't, they don't do the ballots. They don't start counting all early. I mean, they have a very long-standing process, and that's how they do it in California. But yeah, it really draws things out. Like December, I can't even last till December. I got to know what's happening by Thanksgiving.
For real. All right, John Bresnahan, good luck today. Thank you so much for starting in with us. We really appreciate it. All right, I'll see you overnight tonight on CNN. So stick with us. All right, straight ahead here on this Election Day edition of CNN This Morning. Inside the Trump campaign, new reporting on the chaos and confusion staffers have been dealing with since the summer. Plus, it's finally here. The first polls opened just minutes ago. We're going to go live to the battleground states of Georgia and North Carolina.
I saw that 71% of the country is expected to vote. People are going to be waiting in line for 2-3 hours. Then after they check out at the liquor store, they're going to go vote.
I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
Once all the votes are counted, there are moments from this election that we are likely to look back on as critical turning points. Donald Trump's July appearance with the National Association of Black Journalists could very well be one of them. Trump choosing to question Kamala Harris's racial identity, marking a change in strategy from a campaign that had been relatively restrained up to that point. According to new reporting from The Atlantic's Tim Alberta, quote, in the days after his NABJ appearance, Trump began to lose confidence in his team and reportedly was pondering for the first time a shakeup, craving the fun, freewheeling feel of his first campaign. What ensued, according to insiders, was a campaign so chaotic and rife with infighting that staffers began to question whether they would even want to work in a second Trump administration. As the chaos began to spill into the open, Trump offered this assurance.
I think I'm doing a very calm campaign. I mean, we're here. There's no shouting. Now, you'll say he ranted and raved, and not you, but some of you will say he ranted and raved. I didn't rant and rave. I'm a very calm person.
Joining us now, the author of that piece, staff writer for The Atlantic, Tim Alberta. Tim, good morning. It's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Casey. It is good to see you. Happy Election Day.
Happy Election Day, indeed. This is quite a piece coming, obviously, at this critical moment right before the voters finally get to decide. You write in this piece that one of the things that led to all of this chaos was the return of Trump's former campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, who, of course, played a big role in 2016. This is what you write, quote, his arrival, Lewandowski's, coincided with a marked shift in Trump's mood and behavior. Gone suddenly was the candidate of 2024 who, despite all the inevitable outbursts, was at least receptive to direction and aware of consequences. In his place, as the summer progressed, was the alter ego of 2016, the candidate who did and said whatever he wanted and ignored anyone who sought to rein him in. If Trump does go on to lose today, do you think it's going to be because of what shifted here in this moment?
Well, Casey, I think that's the question that a lot of people close to him are already asking. And to be clear, he could very well win in spite of all of this. Everything that I've written about this sort of crazy stretch here of the past 2.5 or so months where Trump has really at times just sort of gone entirely through the guardrails that were set up around him and has turned this campaign into something kind of unrecognizable to the people who had constructed it. And despite all of that, he could win, right? But if in fact he loses, the fear that a lot of his advisors, his aides have, is that they had put him in a position to win. They had done everything that they needed to do to outperform, even just by a sort of marginal, 10% or so, outperform where he was in 2020. And that would have been enough, except for the fact that down the home stretch of this race, he ultimately just got impatient and he got fed up, and he was no longer willing to sort of play by the rules, more or less, that they had put into place for this campaign.
It's just remarkable how, if you lose sight of the humanity of the candidate themselves and how that drives all of this decision making, you really lose sight of what's actually going on. It's pretty remarkable. Tim, I also want to ask you about what you wrote about the people that work for him. You said the home stretch of the campaign hasn't just been hard and stressful, it's been disillusioning. Several campaign officials told me throughout the spring and summer how excited they were about working in the next Trump White House. But now those same people were saying they'd had a change of heart. The past 3 months had been the most unpleasant of their careers. Win or lose, they said they were done with the chaos of Donald Trump, even if the nation was not. What does it say to you that some of these people don't seem to want to continue working for him? I mean, will they vote for him?
Listen, Casey, I can't speculate on whether they'll vote for him or not. I know from talking with some folks just in the last 72 hours that several of the people who work for Donald Trump are sort of indifferent at this point, like just get this over with. And you can tell that they don't particularly care what the outcome is. And by the way, lest anybody be surprised by that, I know that obviously some people are reacting to that with the kind of bulging eye emoji, but this is not new. I mean, this fits with the pattern of what we've seen. Basically, everyone who has worked for Trump, going back to his 2016 campaign, his presidency, of course, by the end, there were a whole bunch of people who were jumping ship and saying, enough is enough, I can't do it anymore. What we see pretty consistently, Casey, is that this kind of collective amnesia tends to set in for folks, and they go back or they enter for the first time thinking that it will be different, but it never winds up being different. I mean, working for Donald Trump in politics is sort of an elaborate Groundhog's Day skit where, folks continue to think that they can change the man, but he doesn't change. And in some cases, he changes them. But at the end of the day, Donald Trump is Donald Trump is Donald Trump. And this exasperation that we're seeing from some of his aides in the 11th hour here would be sort of would be novel, except that it's entirely predictable, and we've seen it before.
Novel, except entirely not. And yes, as someone who was here covering the entire Trump administration, your point is extraordinarily well taken. And if, in fact, he does win, I am interested to see how they are going to staff an administration, because it is sure going to look a lot different than it did last time around. Tim Alberta. Tim, so grateful to have you. Thank you so much for starting your election day with us.
You're welcome, Casey. Thank you.
All right. See you soon, I hope. Still ahead here on CNN This Morning. In just minutes, more polling sites open across the East Coast, including in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia. The first results are also in from Dixville Notch, New Hampshire. Their midnight vote, a dead heat. That's a switch from 2020. Plus, candidates making their closing arguments to voters. It's the end of an unprecedented campaign.
From the beginning, ours has not been a fight against something. It has been a fight for something.
Kamala is, this is known. She's a very low IQ person. And we don't need a low IQ individual.
It's Tuesday, November 5th, Election Day, right now on this special edition of CNN This Morning. Decision Day in America. Polls open across the East Coast, and the very first votes have already been cast. Plus,
are we ready to fight for it?
I've been waiting 4 years for this.
The wait is over, right? By this time tomorrow, we could know which of these two will be the next president or not. And
we don't get to sit this one out.
Star power Kamala Harris counting on Oprah and other celebrities to push her over the finish line in the final hours. Also, Donald Trump's one-time primary opponent, now an outspoken supporter, Vivek Ramaswamy, joins us live on this election day, 2024. 2024. All right, these seconds are ticking up to 6 a.m. here on the East Coast. This is a live look at a polling site. There it is at 6 a.m. They are opening right now in New York. Other sites opening in New Jersey, Connecticut, Virginia, portions of other states here in the East on this election day. Good morning, everyone. I'm Casey Hunt. It's wonderful to have you with us. We made it, finally. Election day is here, and voters are voting on this first Tuesday after the first Monday in America. Election day. At this very moment, polls opening up and down the East Coast in a presidential race that will mark an extraordinary moment in American history. The events of this year, let's put it simply, they've been stunning. Donald Trump facing a felony conviction and then an assassination attempt. Kamala Harris at the top of the ticket for just 107 days after President Joe Biden stepped aside. And the way each is framing this race, the way each talks about America, sharply illustrates the choice facing our country this morning.
I'll start giving you some beautiful things to listen to and honestly, some terrible things to listen to.
After nearly a decade of politics dominated by Trump, the former president held what might have been his final campaign rally ever in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It went like this.
Kamala is, this is known. She's a very low IQ person, and we don't need a low IQ individual. Crazy, horrible human being, Nancy Pelosi, who cheats like hell. She's an evil, sick, crazy. Oh, no. But these are bad people. These are bad. Adam Shifty Schiff. No, they have to cheat. They have to cheat, and they do it very well, actually.
His opponent, Kamala Harris, choosing a different tone, deciding not to mention Donald Trump by name here in the closing days. She ended her last day on the trail in Philadelphia. Lady Gaga, Oprah, the final headliners for Harris, the Rocky Steps nearby, invoking the ultimate underdog. The symbolism of the location also designed to illustrate how Harris and her team view the stakes of this election.
It's good to be back in the city of brotherly love, where the foundation of our democracy was forged. And here at these famous steps, a tribute to those who start as the underdog and climb to victory. We have an opportunity in this election to finally turn the page on a decade of politics that has been driven by fear and division. We are done with that. We're done. We're exhausted with it. Tonight, then we finish as we started, with optimism, with energy, with joy.
All right, on this election day, our panel's here. Annie Linsky, reporter for The Wall Street Journal. Alex Thompson, national political reporter for Axios, CNN political analyst. Bakari Sellers, CNN political commentator, former South Carolina state representative. And Brad Todd, Republican strategist. Welcome to all of you. Thrilled to have you. We made it. It's here.
Constitution says we must stop.
E-Day, baby.
God bless the Constitution.
It's a cherished freedom.
Alex, let me start with you. I want to get kind of everyone's sense as we head into this election day of how in your two cases, your sources are feeling, those that you're talking to, your candidates are looking at this. I mean, Alex, what are you hearing from the Harris campaign this morning?
They say optimistic, but they always caveat it with some different adverb. Cautiously, fragilely.
Isn't nauseously also
is
one of the
another
ones
one.
that keeps
Yes.
coming up?
They basically, and most of them say they feel that I've talked to, they feel they'll win, but they'll win narrowly. There's some that think that they have a chance to win more. There are also some that still just sort of don't want to even predict because they don't want to jinx it. But I think most of the Harris people I've talked to just feel the blue wall will hold, and that if the blue wall holds, she wins 270, 268. Maybe she picks up one more state.
Annie, what are you hearing?
Yeah,
How does the Trump team feel if you've talked to them?
Yeah, I've talked to some of the Trump people. They were just flat out optimistic a week ago. I mean, people I was talking to were saying he is the president, Vance is the vice president. I mean, there was a confidence, and that has shifted a little bit, at least in terms of the staff members that you talk to over there. But on the Harris side, there is this sense that Donald Trump has basically made her closing argument for her and some of the things that he has said over the past 10 days. And so they've sort of sat back a little bit. And I think that if at the end of the day, and we don't know what's going to happen, obviously it's a very close election, but if at the end of the day she prevails, he really would have lost this election rather than the other way around.
Brad, what are you seeing and hearing for viewers who may not know? I know you're really involved in that key Senate race in Pennsylvania. You're seeing a lot of data coming in on the ground. Does what you're seeing line up here?
Well, the key takeaway so far is the Democrat performance in early voting and absentee voting has been way, way, way off what they wanted it to be. They have to do something today that they haven't done in 20 years, which is to get a massive performance from their base on Election Day. Democrats, through the Obama campaign, Bugari was involved, they shifted their voting to early voting 20 years ago, and they became masters at it. They have not succeeded at that this year to the level that they wanted. So they have to do it today. Can it happen? Of course. They've done it before, but it's been a long time.
Bakari, is that true?
No. We actually hit all of our numbers in early voting that we wanted to hit. I mean, if you look at Georgia and North Carolina, we kind of came on strong late, particularly in Georgia. But I mean, we're going to be looking at, we still need, I mean, he is correct in the fact that we do need turnout today. But everybody's really confident about where we are. I mean, Georgia is ripe for a Harris victory. I mean, particularly in those three areas that I keep mentioning where people still need to come out. The thing I want people to understand is in Georgia in particular, Republicans have exhausted all of their votes in Republican rural counties. They've exhausted 98, sometimes more than 100% of their voters. But still in these areas like Fulton County, right, like Chatham County, like Richmond County, Savannah, Augusta, Atlanta, there's so much room there, and you're going to see those people show up to the polls. In North Carolina, we get 300,000 black voters today to show up at the polls. We win North Carolina. Is that a lot? No.
Well, one thing I would throw out about Georgia, though, the fact that rural Republicans have already turned out in waves in early voting records tells you that Republicans don't have an enthusiasm problem. The fact that Democrats have not come out the way they did in 2020 tells you might have an enthusiasm problem.
Well, two things. Enthusiastic votes count as much as unenthusiastic votes.
Absolutely. That's the story of 2012.
But also Democrats on the ground in Georgia that I've talked to, the one thing that does give them anxiety is in 2020 you had Raphael Warnock on the ballot. You do not have a statewide black elected like a senator that's been there for a long time and that is
or
organized.
Or a Stacey Abrams that is organizing.
Yes, exactly. You do not have them on the ballot this time. There's also just concern, not necessarily with Atlanta and the immediate suburbs, but sort of, what do rural black voters do? What do rural black men voters do? There's also a little bit of concern because Trump finally made nice with Governor Kemp down there, belatedly for sure. But he does have that. He does have a little bit of that machine behind him. Does that make the difference? Bakari is not wrong. I'm just saying this is what Democrats in Georgia have anxiety about.
Yeah. Brad, how much does the way Trump is closing impact? I mean, you look at, say, Dave McCormick's Senate race, and you can kind of extrapolate out to the presidential, right? I mean, how much does that rhetoric hurt him here in the final days?
It's not as much what Trump said as what he didn't say in the last couple of days. I thought his rally yesterday was devoid of ideology. I think the way to beat Kamala Harris to say she's a California liberal who's further out from the mainstream. I didn't hear near as much of that in the last 2 days or so as I would have liked from Donald Trump. I think that he's not an ideological person himself, and so therefore I think he doesn't project that the voters are going to be ideological in their decision making. But that's Kamala Harris's vulnerability. If I were Donald Trump, that's what I've been saying the last 2 days.
Bakari, what would you be doing differently if you were running the Harris campaign? Anything at all?
No, I mean, look, you started July 21st. You're here. I mean, you raised and spent $1.2 billion. You kind of built this plane while you're flying, and you're running against. The unique thing about Donald Trump is that outside of 2016, he hasn't won anything. I mean, you can put Donald Trump in any light you want to put him in. 2018, walloped. 2020, got beat. 2022, you guys had us on here talking about this red wave that was coming. And you know what happened to the red wave? It never showed up at the.
Well, in fairness, in 2016, you would have been telling me that Clinton was going to win. So it happens.
What you win? I mean, my point is, he's won 1 out of the last 4 cycles.
Nikki Haley might argue he's won another one.
Well, I mean, and actually, one of the things we saw last night that nobody's really talking about is the Dixville Notch voters.
Yes.
Right? And the unique thing about.
And the Dixville Notch was, there's 6 of them. It was 3-3, split right down the middle, like the polling is showing. Continue.
Who did they all vote for in the primary?
What's that? That I don't have to hand. Go ahead.
Nikki Haley.
Right.
So out of the 6 Nikki...
But to be fair, if you look at how they voted, I did examine the results from this morning from Dixville's Notch, and they did, 4 of them voted for the Democrat in the congressional race. So there's a lot of ticket splitting going on in Dixville.
Yeah,
Notch.
it is actually fascinating.
Yes, they voted for Kelly Ayotte.
But it's 4 registered...
But they all voted for Biden in 2020, and now they're split.
But my point is that there are 4 registered Republicans and 2 unregistered. There's not a singular Democrat in there. There's not a singular registered Democrat of those 6. You know what that means? I mean,
they are New England Republicans.
This tells you how desperate we are to talk about something.
All right, we've got so much coming up ahead on this special Election Day edition of CNN This Morning. Donald Trump landing a last-minute endorsement from popular podcaster Joe Rogan. Is it going to help him win over voters who weren't already leaning his way? Plus,
every single vote, every one is going to matter.
Kamala Harris turning to some famous friends in the closing hours of her race. And the gender gap, one last look at how this Mars versus Venus election could determine who wins the White House.
We're running like everything's on the line because it is.
He will be a protector of women, and it's why I'm voting for him.
They do it on the left, they do it on the right. They gaslight you, they manipulate you, they promote narratives. And the only one who's not doing that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
You a fan?
Yeah, I am a fan. Yeah, he's the only one that makes sense to me. He's the only one that he doesn't attack people. He attacks actions and ideas.
An about-face from Joe Rogan just 3 months ago. One of the world's most popular podcasters thought RFK Jr. was the only option in the 2024 race. But now, on the eve of the election, Rogan formally endorsing Donald Trump. He announced that decision after his interview with billionaire and Trump ally Elon Musk. Rogan wrote in a post on X last night that Musk, quote, makes what I think is the most compelling case for Trump you'll hear, and I would agree with him every step of the way. And for the record, yes, that's an endorsement of Trump. Rogan's support comes as the Trump campaign has, of course, pushed to win over young male voters this cycle, with the former president making numerous appearances on podcasts popular with that demographic, including the Joe Rogan Experience.
There's no reason not to think that Mars and all these planets don't have life.
Is cocaine a stronger
Oh, yeah.
up?
Yeah. A lot of wrestlers want to do the UFC thing, but they can't take the shots. I played football, too. I didn't particularly like it.
What position were you?
No, I didn't like it. I played tight end.
And I'll tell you about TikTok. Trump is going to keep TikTok going.
It looks so much more natural on TikTok when you see it being filmed from the outside. The TikTok dance looks conspicuously out of place. Look, I'm not in the camp of someone who I don't really think endorsements tend to matter that much. I wondered about Taylor Swift, and I do wonder about Joe Rogan. Brad, do you think that this actually moves the needle?
Well, I think Donald Trump's opponent today is not so much Kamala Harris as it is the Xbox. He needs people who are young males who might not think voting matters and they think the Xbox more fun to get off that couch and go to vote. And
That's a really interesting, it's a very sharp way to put that.
And I think Joe Rogan is important in that demographic. I think Elon Musk is important in that demographic. John Fetterman in Pennsylvania says that a lot of young males think that Elon Musk is Tony Stark. And so I think that's actually a pretty important endorsement for him. So I do think it's been a unique strategy. And, Donald Trump's interview with Joe Rogan has been downloaded 90 million times. That's a third of the country. That's a really, really big reach.
What do you think, Bakari?
Oh, I don't think it matters, especially yesterday, the timing of it. I mean, having Joe Rogan maybe go on some college campuses and do those type of things, but just simply sitting in your studio in Austin and saying, you know, go vote for Donald Trump, I don't think really matters much while you're talking to Elon Musk. I mean, frankly speaking, this is very personal for me. I'm just ready to turn the page on the Elon Musk, the Bill Ackmans, the David Sacks, the people who've saturated this new campaign propaganda site known as Twitter and X. And we'll see if that brings any value, but I don't know how that actually gets people out to vote. But what we are seeing with young voters who are voting in astronomical numbers is that young women are over-indexing in Generation Z because they understand what's at stake in this election.
Yeah. I feel like in an election this close, everything matters. And I think if you're Trump, I mean, you wanted this endorsement a week ago, and you wanted Joe Rogan to be talking, you know, about his endorsement for a full 7 days. But that being said, I think if you're Trump, better late than never. And these are the voters that are low propensity voters, that it's more difficult for them to vote. They tend not to. So I think everything matters in this moment.
Yeah. I was just going to add that Rogan's really put his hand on the scale for Trump, not just as of yesterday, but the last 2 weeks. Not only did he interview Trump, then he interviewed J.D. Vance, and then he also just interviewed Elon Musk. I'd also say that their relationship has been sort of interesting because in 2022, Joe Rogan said he was not a Trump supporter in any way, shape, or form, and then he never wanted to have him on the podcast. Then the combination of the assassination attempt and also just like the UFC dynamic is what convinced Joe Rogan to change his mind, apparently. That's what Joe Rogan has said. And so sort of the way that they came to this place, if, to Annie's point, any small thing can matter. If we see sort of young men come out in droves, it'll be interesting to sort of chart that relationship.
Let's also talk about how pompous Joe Rogan is, just for 1 second. I need to add a footnote from the Harris campaign and how Joe Rogan literally wanted the Vice President of the United States of America to come to Austin, Texas to sit in his studio when she actually said and agreed to do an interview, but they had to do it for an hour in Washington, D.C. because she literally is the Vice President of the United States. Call Her Daddy actually created an entire studio in a hotel room to make sure that worked. And so for somebody to have the audacity to believe that the Vice President must come to me, I think is a pompous footnote that needs to be added. And I think a lot of
she has a plan. Democrats are always saying we meet voters where they are, and if that is not meeting them where they are, I mean,
it was a convenient way for her to get out of the interview.
I mean,
she's got a plane; she can go in.
I would
go wherever.
Just one thing. She was already in Houston around that same time.
But it's in Austin.
No, I understand. I mean,
I was like, they're not the same city.
It's like if she wanted to do the interview, she could have.
This is my point.
First of all, let's back up. Kamala Harris is not a candidate for president of the United States alone. Kamala Harris is also Vice President of the United States of America. And we can't say, she could. It doesn't work that way.
His audience of 90 million people.
I was just saying, Donald Trump is also the former president, and he went to Austin.
Yeah, it's 90 million people. I guarantee she's been to Austin.
He's currently unemployed.
The constitutional role of the Vice President is not. Okay. Not a lot of duties for the Vice President.
All right, we got to take a break, guys.
She doesn't have a job.
I'm sorry. I love you. We're taking a break. Coming up on CNN this morning, will rain depress turnout in some of the blue wall states? Your election day forecast up next. Plus, we're going to hear from the Trump campaign. Vivek Ramaswamy joins us live as voters head to the polls. It's election day in America, and some battleground voters are going to need an umbrella. Let's get to our meteorologist, the weatherman, Derek Van Dam. Derek, in a race this close, quite literally anything could make the difference, including, say, turnout in Detroit or Milwaukee. Yeah. What are those voters looking at?
Good point. Yeah. So if you're in Michigan or Wisconsin, two battleground states, there's a lot of wet weather to contend with, so you might have to go a little early this morning heading to the polls. We've got an area of low pressure that's racing through the Midwest, and this will bring rainfall to those locations. Cold front extends as far south as the Mississippi Valley, so that'll bring rainfall as well. So let's get a little bit more granular, a little more specific. Grand Rapids, Michigan, my hometown and home state. Getting wet right now across the big Lake Michigan. Milwaukee also anticipating rainfall. So the election day weather forecast for Grand Rapids to Detroit, unfortunately, it will be wet. You'll be battling some raindrops falling from the sky. A little bit heavier, though, the further south you travel. check this out. St. Louis to Little Rock, we've got flash flood watches and warnings in place that are valid through this morning. Anywhere you see the shading of red, that includes St. Louis downtown as well. So this cold front advances eastward. Maybe you're hitting the poles for your lunchtime this afternoon. You'll see the cold front impacting places like Chicago, Memphis. But notice the East Coast stays dry. So other battleground states into Pennsylvania, Georgia, the forecast looking fantastic. In fact, no reason to get out there and vote this morning for Philadelphia, Atlanta. Temperatures very tranquil in the upper 70s and low 80s, depending on where you're located. And out west, a little bit of a different story. Nevada will be a bit on the cool side, and Arizona also cool but stays dry. Casey?
Yeah, I think you mean no reason not to get out there and vote, because look at that. In most of these battleground states, it's a beautiful day to cast your vote.
That's
Derek
what I'm
Van Dam. Exactly. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. All right, polls, of course, already starting to open across the East Coast. At the top of the hour, they'll open in the critical swing state of Georgia. They, of course, have already been dealing with threats and misinformation swirling around this election. CNN's Isabel Rosales joins us live in Atlanta with more. Isabel, I know you're at a polling place. Tell us what you're seeing there. But then there's also this question about misinformation and what impact they may have on people coming to the polls. Questions perhaps in the aftermath as well. Georgia, the epicenter of Donald Trump's challenges to the 2020 election. What are you hearing?
Yeah, they were battling that back in 2020 and still today in 2024. The Republican-led Secretary of State's office working around the clock to counter disinformation campaigns. A lot of the deeply held mistrust coming from within their same party. So let me talk about Georgia, the peach state that is so critical for both parties here. Democrats, of course, hoping to keep it blue after managing to flip it back in 2020, the first time they've been able to do that in nearly 30 years since Bill Clinton. I am in Fulton County, the most populous county in the state, home to Atlanta. And this is what we're looking at one of 177 polling locations at this library. About 30 minutes out to polls opening, 6-7 people in line so far, starting to trickle in. At 7 on the dot, Casey, all 159 counties here in the Peach State can start tabulating all absentee mail-in ballots and early voting. And then 12 hours later, by 7 p.m., polls close. Now, we are anticipating here in Georgia to get an early indicator early on in the evening of which way this battleground state possibly could be swinging, depending on how close those margins are, because they count the votes so quickly. There's, in fact, a new state law that aimed to speed up the counting. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger saying that by 8 p.m., Casey, we should have 70 to 75% of all votes cast in Georgia tabulated. Of course, that might not be the case for the rest of the country. That could take days more.
Yeah, well, Georgia is really going to provide us kind of an interesting indicator there at the beginning of the evening. It could be a long one, but if for whatever reason Georgia showed signs that Harris was going to overperform, it might be a shorter night. Isabel Rosales, thank you very much for that report. All right, still coming up after the break, Donald Trump trying to make up ground with women voters. However, that didn't stop him and his allies from using some choice words to describe some of his female rivals in the final days of the campaign. Plus, former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy spent this election cycle pitching Donald Trump to younger voters. He joins us next.
This is a six-pack under the leadership of Kamala Harris. This is a six-pack under the leadership of Donald J. Trump. Let's make America great again.
Okay, the Trump fans campaign taking their final pitch to social media. I'll let you decide whether you think that's effective. It's certainly visually arresting. Their goal for months has been to reach Generation Z voters, especially young men. Our next guest has spent a lot of time making the case for Trump to young people on college campuses who, like these students at Penn State, have a wide range of opinion about the candidates.
I am not a fan of Trump. I think it's all a show. I think he truly does not care about anything other than himself.
I'm voting for Donald Trump. For me, it's really just the threat of rising global conflict.
There's just some things you can't play with. You know, the economy stretches, goes back and forth all the time, but the abortion's gone, it's gone.
Past 4 years haven't been great. I think that January 6th was one of the most unacceptable attacks on democracy.
Just from the people I'm friends with, I would say it's the cool thing to vote for Trump.
The cool thing to vote for Trump. Joining us now, entrepreneur, former Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy, who is now, of course, backing Donald Trump. Sir, good to have you in the program. Thanks for being here.
Good morning, Casey.
So I don't think anyone would argue with more beer. My question for you, big picture, though, because the majority of voters in America are women, straight up. If Donald Trump's going to win this election, he needs men to vote for him in greater numbers than women vote for Harris, by a greater percentage. Is Trump going to be able to do that tonight?
I think he is, and that's one way to cut it. I also look at other demographic groups that have historically gone for Democrats that are clearly coming our way this time around. Greater portions of the black vote and Hispanic vote, I think, no doubt. And then you put your finger on an important one, where I have traveled college campuses, met with young people across the country, and especially in swing states. And I think decisively we're going to see a greater shift in Gen Z towards voting for Donald Trump this time around. Casey, principally motivated by staying out of foreign conflicts, avoiding World War III, growing the economy and bringing down housing costs. Those are some of the issues most on the minds of young Americans. And I think those shifts are together going to comprise, I think, a new coalition for Republicans. Reagan was the last Republican candidate to do this, to really build a new coalition. I think that's happening in plain sight. And if my experience traveling the country is any indication, I think that's going to be very positive for Donald Trump tonight.
I will say it's anecdotal for sure, but conversations among moms, other women I run into about young people, not necessarily quite college age yet, but they perhaps are showing, especially men, an inclination to be more willing to vote for conservatives than perhaps people would have assumed in the past. You mentioned wars, foreign conflicts. Do you think that's the main issue for them? I mean, what is driving that?
Yeah, if I had to boil it down to two issues, one is the concern that if there is a foreign war, God forbid, that the United States is involved in, that's going to fall on Gen Z's shoulders. I think there's a lot of skepticism, even from the millennial generation on down, about the failures in Iraq and Afghanistan. I think people give Donald Trump a lot of credit for not being a partisan, in the sense that he was actually bucking the Republican trend of supporting wars like the Iraq War. I think that's carried a lot of credibility with young people who feel duped by a lot of the bases for entering those wars. And then you look at the results in terms of the Ukraine conflict and the Middle East conflict. We didn't have that under Donald Trump. So I think that's probably the number one motivator for young people. Combine that with rising costs. What we've seen over the last several years, and this is a hard fact, is that prices have gone up, but wages have not kept up. And that keeps the American dream out of reach for a lot of those young people. I think the top concern, frankly, for people graduating from college with debt is, are they going to be able to start a family and own a home? And it is a hard fact, Casey, that about 4 million fewer Americans own a home now than they did under the Trump years. And so I think those are the two factors, especially motivating young voters, especially young men, but I see it among some young women too. This is a real concern.
All right. I want to play for you something that Donald Trump said at his rally in Pittsburgh on Monday about, he called the election too big to rig. Let's watch.
I do believe it is too big to rig. I think it's too big to rig. They'll try. And they are trying, you know, though. It's too big to rig. This is a big movement. This is, you know, we did great in 2016. We did much better in 2020, but a lot of bad things happened. This is that big, powerful, vicious party, though. No, it's a vicious machine. I mean, they can take all these bad ideas and win elections. It's like there's only way you could do that. One way. There's only one way.
Sir, if Donald Trump loses the election today, should he concede?
Look, I think that one commitment I think Republicans can make is, if Donald Trump loses this election and Kamala Harris becomes the president, God forbid in my case, I'm not rooting for that outcome, Republicans are not going to launch some type of multi-year investigation that impedes the first 2 years of her presidency with false allegations of foreign election interference. We've seen that within the last decade in this country.
Right, but it's a yes or no question, sir. I mean, should he concede or should he not?
I think whoever wins the election should win the election, and whoever loses should concede. But the fact of the matter is, when we look at the last 10 years, in case you and I both understand the subtext of this question, there's been this, I think, brewed up concern that I think is really designed, I think in many ways, to mislead voters about what's happened in the last 10 years.
Misleading voters.
There's
I mean, people
been
attacked the Capitol to try to interrupt the process of certifying the last election.
If I may just finish my point, that's no doubt been talked. The January 6th issue has been talked about ad nauseum. What hasn't is the fact that the presidency was actually undermined by Kamala Harris and the Democrats, the Democratic Party that Kamala Harris is a part of, for the first 2 years of Donald Trump's presidency on allegations of a false Russia collusion hoax that was disproven. So what do we want this time around? We want a free, fair election where the winner is decisively decided. Americans can then move forward as a country behind that. Whichever candidate wins, I'm looking forward to that happening for the country. And I'm hoping that's Donald Trump tonight.
Are you confident our election day is going to be free and fair?
I certainly hope so. I mean, I think I would ask the same question of you. I have every hope that the polling locations are properly monitored, that you see a lot of the cases that have worked themselves out this time around with respect to early voting, the timestamps that need to be on them. I think Pennsylvania and their courts came down, I think, on the right side of that decision. One of the things that we have a great consciousness of as well is people being able to vote effectively on time. So I'm hopeful that we're going to see an outstanding, well-run election with a great result. And as you know, I'm supporting Donald Trump, and I'm rooting for that victory tomorrow.
All right. Vivek Ramaswamy for us this morning. Sir, thanks very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Let's turn now to this. Both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have spent the past several weeks looking to win over voters of the opposite gender, respectively. At the same time, in the final days of this campaign, Trump and his allies have gone after Harris and other Democratic women in remarkably disparaging terms. Watch this.
Kamala is, I mean, this is known. She's a very low IQ person.
In 2 days, we are going to take out the trash in Washington, D.C., and the trash's name is Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris is a C word. You heard that right. A big old C word.
That crazy, horrible human being, Nancy Pelosi, she's an evil, sick, crazy bitch. Oh, no. It starts with a B, but I won't say it.
Brad Todd, is it productive to use B and C words for women that you would like to vote for you?
I think one of my business partners is fond of saying we've reached the groundling phase of this campaign in Shakespearean terms, you know, that the appeal is to the people on the ground who paid a nickel for the show and not the people in the boxes who are perhaps a bit more high-minded. It's definitely not a wrong track appeal or an economic appeal, which is, I think, what would get Donald Trump more votes. But I don't think we're going to change Donald Trump or his vaudeville
But even like
style.
Nikki Haley and Megyn Kelly are saying, you know, hey, the brotastic, the bromance.
It's
like
the
maybe
economy.
less
It's the
of that.
economy. Well, I mean, we do have a gender gap in this election. It sits right on top of a marriage gap, and I think your segment with Vivek Ramaswamy points to something. You know, single men really are important because the male vote is definitely for Donald Trump, but it's less so if you're single. The same thing in reverse for Kamala Harris. And so I think that portion of what you saw with the beer and all that sort of stuff, I actually think that's productive for that Xbox single male
I
voter.
laughed at the beer. That's fine.
Just one thing, there's two questions here. One is the political effect of all of these things that he's saying. You know, honestly, a lot of what he's saying reminds me of exactly what they did to Hillary Clinton in 2016. But there's also, I think, we should just call it out that there's been a large sexist campaign against Kamala Harris in the final days. You had Hulk Hogan going up there and making very crude jokes at Madison Square Garden. You also, and Kamala Harris, because she does not want this race to be about questions about is America ready for the first woman president, has basically had to not respond and just like take it and have and she's had the discipline not to do that.
I think Donald Trump would be much better off if he would focus on ideology, but much better off. I don't think he's going to get swing voters over personal insults. I think he can get them on saying she's too far to the left.
And he was in 2016 and 2020. I mean, if you looked at the last 2 weeks of his election campaign in those two races, he was a much more disciplined candidate than he is being right now. 2016, he won. 2020, he way overperformed where the polls were saying he was at. So I mean, there is a difference in how Trump is behaving in the end of this race.
Also, one of the things that I haven't really seen, and I mean, we have all of these amazing papers and we work with a lot of journalists all the time, is talking about the double standard that we've applied in this race. Donald Trump gets up there and he makes no sense and calls it a weave. and Kamala Harris goes out and presents herself. You don't have to like the ideology. That's a sound debate. But she gets called everything but a child of God by people. But she has to be perfect. I mean, Kamala Harris, and I've said this before, as a woman in this country running for president, has to run the 110 hurdles in high heels and then do a flip at the finish line just for the media to treat her with the same type of lens that they treat Donald Trump. There is no way that someone who goes up there and dances or does like this really weird fixation on microphones or loses his train of thought or actually is in Georgia and thinks the Senate candidate from Pennsylvania is there.
I think it was North Carolina.
Well, North Carolina and thinks that, thank you, and thinks the Senate candidate from Pennsylvania is there and gets treated with some level of credibility, whereas she has to be perfect. The crazy thing about that is she's talented enough to give herself an opportunity to be president of the United States today, and I think that's a failure on all our parts.
All right. Annie, Alex, Bakari, thank you all for being with us on this election day. Alex, Bakari, you guys are going to be up overnight with me, okay? 2 a.m., we're going to actually be in New York. We all have to go right after the show is over. Brad's going to stick around for our next segment. Straight ahead here on this special edition of CNN This Morning, I'm joined by a panel of Republicans, 2 of whom are voting for Kamala Harris. We're going to talk about what it could mean for the GOP if this is Donald Trump's last turn on the national stage. And how we got here. We're going to take a look back at the events of the last 2 years. It's head-spinning how this race has been transformed leading up to this election day.
The total initiative relative to what we're going to do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
All right, welcome back to CNN This Morning. Also at stake in this election, the future of the Republican Party as Trump completes his 3rd presidential campaign. Traditional conservative Republicans like Mitt Romney and the Cheney family are finding they don't have much of a voice in Donald Trump's Republican Party. It began on that golden escalator ride in Trump Tower back in June of 2016, where Trump announced his candidacy for president, first floated the idea of a border wall, and then, of course, came Trump's presidency.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides.
Then President Trump talking about protests in Charlottesville, Virginia, that featured neo-Nazis chanting, "Jews will not replace us." In those protests, dozens were injured. A young woman was killed after someone drove their car through a crowd. To this day, Trump maintains those remarks were perfect.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
And of course, before that, there were Trump's remarks about John McCain's military service, the start of a pattern of derogatory comments directed at the former prisoner of war. And in so many ways, Trump has transformed the GOP, culminating in these closing remarks last night.
We will defeat the corrupt system in Washington because I'm not running against Kamala. I'm running against an evil Democrat system. These are evil people.
All right, joining us now, former Congressman Adam Kinzinger and former Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan. They are both part of Republicans for Harris and have been campaigning for the Democratic nominee. And of course, Brad Todd, who is a more traditional Republican, I guess, shall we say, is actually really not anymore. You're a Trump Republican. Gentlemen, I'm so grateful to have you here on this consequential day. Congressman, let me start with you. I mean, what do you think is really at stake here? Certainly, Democrats seem to be using the phrase nauseously optimistic about what's going to happen. But put it in terms of what you think is at stake for the country and what it means for the party that you served in for so long.
I think it's the future of conservatism. I mean, honestly, there is nothing conservative about the Republican Party today. There really isn't. You know, standing with Vladimir Putin against your own intel services, kind of throwing Ukraine under the bus, a lot of spending, a future that's just based on dividing people against each other and not really showing any kind of an optimistic future. I think if the Republican Party loses, if Donald Trump loses, it's a chance for the GOP to kind of look inside and say, what have we done with our soul? How many times? I mean, if they'd have elected Nikki Haley, you probably could have won the presidency today and had the presidency for 8 years. But instead, there's this cult. And so I think it's the future of conservatism. And that's why I know Jeff, we have no regrets for what we've done. And I always jokingly say I'd do it twice as hard if I could go back in time.
Jeff?
Yeah, this isn't position A, right? I didn't get into politics 12 years ago and expect to be doing this, but this is where I believe is the best place for us to be able to hit the reset button and create a GOP 2.0. A party that focuses and defends on policies and uses empathy to grow the size of the tent and use a tone that invites and encourages. I think all Republicans, for the most part, including the ones that are voting for Donald Trump, would agree he's not the future of the party. And I think we're in this really awkward spot right now where regardless of whether Donald Trump wins or loses, this party's got this little short window of time to get it right, to start taking our own medicine. If Donald Trump wins, there's no doubt he'll wreck the car and continue to soil the brand of being a Republican. And so I think you're going to watch entire herds of Republicans look for somewhere else that's more respectable. That could mean we could start hemorrhaging to Democrats by the droves. If Kamala Harris wins and actually does govern towards the middle, she has a chance to grow the size, the net total of the party, if she does govern towards the middle. Not in the middle, she's a Democrat, but if she governs towards the middle, like she did on the campaign trail, and ask our opinion on certain policies, then I think she's got a chance to grow the party.
Brad, if someone other than Donald Trump, to the Congressman's point, had been at the top of the Republican ticket, considering the approval rating of President Biden and even some of the way Harris's numbers have moved, would Republicans be running away with this election? I mean,
this is a big debate inside the Republican Party. I mean, there's certainly an argument to say that a candidate like Nikki Haley could have had a lot more suburban voters who are skeptical of the way Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have run the country. That's one argument. Another argument is the fact that a lot of former Democrats, blue-collar voters, are a lot more comfortable in Donald Trump's Republican Party than they would have been in Mitt Romney's Republican Party. And the data is pretty clear that there's a good argument for that, too. I didn't predict Donald Trump would win in 2015. In fact, I said the opposite plenty of times, over and over, in the primary. After that election, I wrote a book with Selena Zito on the Trump coalition, trying to understand a little bit more about how the populist coalition was reshaping it. It is a realignment, and we have a working-class coalition on the Republican side now, and the Democratic Party's become an upper-class coalition. Historically in America, the working-class coalition wins.
Jeff Duncan, I do want to make sure that we kind of end this show today talking about what I think is one of the things that brought you to where you are, and that is the sanctity of our peaceful transfer of power and the stakes for the election here, because there are already signs that if, in fact, Donald Trump were to lose, there's unlikely to be a concession. You obviously personally experienced the violence that came with standing up to Trump when he tried to convince the Georgia officials, you included, to change the election results. What are those stakes of that today?
Well, there's so much at stake, but I think, and way more than a party. I mean, just the ideology of a country, the nature of having a fair and free election, and then a peaceful transfer of power. But I can't help but think how off-base this country is right now, how off-base the Republican Party is. And it all goes back to one person. And I think what's happened is we've lost, we don't have any leaders. We don't have anybody standing up modeling the right thing to do. The job of president is the least important. It doesn't determine how much traffic you sit in, how good your kids' schools are, or how safe your neighborhoods are. The job of president sets the North Star. And Donald Trump has set that North Star in the gutter. And we as Republicans have said, that's okay. It's not okay.
I will say, Congressman Kinzinger, I remember sitting on a different TV set, but with you as this was first unfolding with Trump, and you saying something very similar to that our leaders have to lead. And of course, now here we are. I would love to have this conversation all morning. Unfortunately, we're out of time because I do want to spend the last few minutes of this taking a little bit of a walk down memory lane. This election has been many things: unprecedented, unpredictable, and really, more than anything, unforgettable.
In order to make America great and glorious again, I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
This is not a time to be complacent. That's why I'm running for re-election.
His approval numbers are historically low, rivaling only Jimmy Carter, who got slaughtered, of course, in that election.
Donald Trump will officially become the first former president in the history of these United States to face a criminal trial.
This is an assault on America.
You would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one. He says, you're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, other than day one.
The first Biden-Trump debate of 2024 is now set for June 27th, right here on CNN.
What I've been able to do with the with the COVID. Excuse me, with dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
We are effed. That reaction from a Democratic source after watching President Biden's performance in last night's CNN debate. It sounds like you're actually open to the idea that it might be the right decision for him to step aside.
I think what I'm stressing is it has to be his decision.
It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Donald Trump, injured but safe. The 2024 election fundamentally altered. America reeling from a horrific act of violence.
I said, let Trumpomania run wild, brother.
Congressman, do you think that Kamala Harris at the top of the Democratic ticket could beat former President Trump in the fall?
I think she would smoke him, honestly.
For the first time in over half a century, a sitting president who can still run for re-election will not appear on the ballot. President Joe Biden making the stunning announcement on Sunday.
Kamala Harris. Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we ready to fight for it? The next Vice President of the United States, Tim Walz.
You know it, you feel it. These guys are creepy and, yes, just weird as hell. That's what you see.
It is therefore my honor to nominate Ohio Senator J.D. Vance.
The childless cat lady. Would you like to comment on that?
Obviously, it was a sarcastic comment. I've got nothing against cats.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes.
We are not going back. We are not going back.
Welcome to all of you. So grateful to have you here. Bakari, you okay?
Yeah.
Caffeine.
I don't know where I am or what I'm doing, but I'm apparently here.
Just a little concerned. Can we put this shirt button?
No, first of all, I am making a statement.
Hang on. Let me get my Bakari.
All right.
Here we go, Bakari.
Oh my God! No! Thank God you could barely see that on camera.
The Trump campaign says shots were fired in the vicinity of the former president at his Doral Golf Resort. He is safe.
A few days ago, we had an incident. I have to say, Secret Service did a hell of a job. They really did.
Arnold Palmer was all man. He took showers with the other pros. They came out of there. They said, oh, my God. I'm looking for a job, and I've always wanted to work at McDonald's. How do you like my garbage truck? This truck is in honor of Kamala and Joe Biden.
Are we ready to vote? Are we ready to win?
With your vote tomorrow, we can fix every single problem our country faces.
All right, on this election day, a final reminder that it is now up to you. It's in your hands. It's the beauty of the system that we have, that no matter what we may or may not say here as we cover the candidates, it's your decision. It's up to you. Voters are voting. Get out there. Don't miss your chance. Thanks to all of you for being with us. I'm Casey Hunt. CNN's Election Day coverage continues right now.
As the famed political scientist Barry Manilow once said, looks like we made it. It is Election Day in America. Polls right now opening across the East Coast, Midwest, and South. We have a live look at the critical battleground states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and North Carolina. One way or another, there will be history. Will Donald Trump be the first president since Grover Cleveland voted out of the White House and voted back in? Will Kamala Harris be the first woman ever elected president? Just hours ago, both candidates held their final rallies.
All we have to do is get out the vote tomorrow. You get out the vote, they can't do anything about it. We win. In other words, to make you feel a little guilty, we would only have you to blame.
All right,
this could be one of the closest races in history. Every single vote matters. Your vote is your voice, and your voice is your power. Are you ready to make your voices heard?
I'm John Berman in New York. Sarah Siner is in Wisconsin. Kate Baldwin is in Pennsylvania. This is CNN's flagship morning newscast, Election Edition. CNN News Central starts now.
This is it, everyone. We are here in Pennsylvania. This is the battleground that put Joe Biden over the top 4 years ago, and the Commonwealth could be just as consequential this time around. With 19 electoral votes, Pennsylvania is the biggest prize of all the battleground states, the state most visited by the campaigns this year. And this morning, we are in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is Bensalem High School, which is where we're at right now, where doors are opening right now, and the polling site is just now opening up for business today. People started lining up before 6 a.m., more than an hour before doors opened here. 3 precincts vote here. I was here 4 years ago on election night, and this is one polling site that sees a lot of foot traffic and can handle a lot of voters. Bucks County is one of those collar counties that we talk so much about, just north of Philadelphia, and it is considered the swingingest county of this swing state and is known as something of a bellwether for the Commonwealth. And today we will find out if that is true this time around. So let's go over now to Sarah in another critical battleground state.
Hey, Kate Baldwin. We are in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, and we're less than an hour away from the first vote being cast in person here and the first absentee ballot being counted in the state. In this state, election officials have to wait to begin counting ballots until polls open. Now, already, more than 1.5 million absentee votes have been cast in Wisconsin. Election officials tell us the state could set a brand new record for early in-person absentee voting. More than 41% of all active registered voters in Wisconsin have already cast ballots before the polls even open, according to the Wisconsin Elections Commission. Now, Cedarburg is an interesting place because it has about 12,000 people in it. And we're inside the community gym, and this is the only place in town where people can vote. So we're expecting to see big crowds here. Now, Joe Biden won this place by 19 votes. He won the state by 20,000 votes in 2020. There's a lot of excitement here as to what is going to happen as they prepare for what could be a record-breaking number of voters. And as you know, Wisconsin has 10 electoral votes up for grabs.
10 big ones, Sarah. Sarah Siner there in Wisconsin. Kate Baldwin in the swing state of Pennsylvania. I, again, am in the non-swing state of New York. So let's check in with both campaigns now. Our reporters covering them. CNN's Elena Treen is in Palm Beach, Florida, covering the Trump campaign. What's the mood there this morning, Elena?
Well, happy Election Day, John. We made it. And look, I think today when I've talked to the Trump campaign about what they're thinking about, they said it really comes down to one issue, and that is turnout. Now, just to give you a sense of what Donald Trump is going to be doing, he's going to be at his club at Mar-a-Lago, back there behind me somewhere, and he's going to be doing some tele-rallies, but we also expect him to vote in person today with the former First Lady Melania Trump. And then, of course, tonight he is planning to arrive and give remarks at some point at the Palm Beach Convention Center where they're doing their election night party. Now, look, we saw yesterday Donald Trump finish off his final day on the campaign trail with a series of rallies across 3 different states. And the one thing that his campaign kept pushing was this idea of please hit your closing message. And they really wanted that closing message to be, were you better off 4 years ago than you were today? Take a listen to what Donald Trump told his supporters.
We do not have to live this way. We don't have to live this way. We're not living. They do that was good. Can you name one thing? With your vote tomorrow, we can fix every single problem our country faces and lead America, indeed the world, to new heights of glory. Think of that statement, how beautiful that is. New heights of glory, that's what's going to happen.
Now, John, that was the type of rhetoric that Donald Trump's campaign had been hoping that he would be using far longer than just yesterday, but he did end up giving that closing message in both Pennsylvania and Michigan. He also brought up members of his family. I'd note the only daughter who wasn't there was Ivanka Trump. He also did not have Melania Trump by his side, but they were really trying to make a full show of that final rally before today. And I do just want to go back to what I mentioned at the very top of this, which is that the big focus for the Trump campaign today is turnout. When I've talked to his advisors, they say at this point, the one big question is whether or not their people, the people that they are expecting to come out for them, are actually going to turn out to the polls. And they argued that they're cautiously optimistic. I mean, of course, they don't know anything. We don't know anything about how this is going to go, but they're going to be very closely huddled up, I'm told, at Mar-a-Lago, analyzing this data and seeing what happens before this evening. John?
So they're saying it all comes down to turnout, a novel idea in political coverage. Elena Treat, thank you for that. Let's go over to Eva McKend, who's in Washington, where Vice President Harris will be tonight. What's the mood inside the Harris campaign, Eva?
Well, John, the Harris campaign wakes up this morning confident they have multiple pathways to 270. And though the cleanest possible path continues to remain the blue wall states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, they have long maintained that they are competing, or have competed rather, in all 7 battleground states. Now, they are expecting near complete results from North Carolina and Georgia, probably this evening, with the other states soon to follow. But they are saying that they also anticipate that this process could take several days, and that would not be unusual. But throughout, it's important that the team remains calm and confident. Now, as for the vice president, she closed out her campaign in Pennsylvania, visiting every corner of the state with the same positive and optimistic, hopeful, forward-looking message as she tried to consolidate a diverse coalition of voters. Take a listen.
We are the promise of America. I see it in the women who refuse to accept a future without reproductive freedom, and in the men who support them. I see it in Republicans who have never voted for a Democrat before, but who put the Constitution of the United States above party.
Now, as for the vice president, we're going to hear her today do several radio interviews. Her running mate, Governor Walz, will be in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And then the big event is at Howard University, the watch party tonight, a tremendous homecoming for her after graduating from Howard nearly 40 years ago, and a remarkable moment for this historically black college. John?
So the Harris campaign feeling it could all be decided very quickly, or it could take a while. That narrows it down. Eva McKend, thank you very much. We will talk to you again shortly. Let's go back to Kate in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania.
It could happen quickly, or it could take a really long time. Like, welcome to Pennsylvania and the voting rules in Pennsylvania for sure. So we're going to continue our coverage here in Pennsylvania, and we're also going to take you live to Battleground, Georgia, as doors are opening right now at polling sites across the state. And as there are early reports of at least one poll worker arrested after making threats to other poll workers, and the huge podcast star Joe Rogan making an 11th hour endorsement, throwing his support behind Donald Trump. And yes, you are hearing some DJing going on behind me because we have a DJ at the polls here in Bensalem. So we're just going to keep that going for you. And also this, an election day tradition, the first votes being counted in the country in tiny Dixville Notch, New Hampshire.
All right, we ready for president? 3 for Kamala Harris, 3 for Donald Trump. Following the national trends.
Here we go. All right, we are taking a look there. There is Warren, Michigan, bright and early, and already voters are standing in line and making their choice. It is Election Day in America happening now. Polls are also open. In Georgia, one of the 7 swing states that could determine the outcome of the election, more than 4 million Georgia voters have already cast their ballots. CNN's Isabel Rosales is in Atlanta. Isabel, what can you tell us? What's the latest there?
Good morning to you, Sarah. Yeah, polls just opened up about 15 minutes ago, and you can still see, in fact, a line of voters still trickling in, one at a time going in there to cast their vote for the person who earned their vote. I want to actually introduce you to Elizabeth Gonzalez right this way. She was the first person in line this morning. Elizabeth, thank you so much for talking with us. What time did you get in?
I went to get breakfast at 5. I got here shortly after 5, and I made sure I was first in line.
First in line. So 5 in the morning, 2 hours before polls opened. Wow. May I ask you, Elizabeth, is there a particular candidate that which candidate earned your vote?
I'd rather not say, but
Sure.
but yeah, it was one of the important ones.
Well, between the two major candidates, can I ask you what issues then spoke to you?
Women's reproductive rights, and the way that women are husbands are sacrificing their wives, children are sacrificing their mothers and then doctors are being threatened with jail time, all because women need their reproductive rights, and you know, regardless of what side you believe and what issues you believe, women have the right to have their health. It shouldn't be, you know, other people outside of the, you know, it should be between the health care provider and the woman.
Yeah, and you told me earlier on you weren't even sure if you were going to vote this time around, right?
That's
because of the politics of everything?
Yeah, that's because in the 2020 election, everything was like just crammed down everybody's throat, and I had it up to here. So at the last moment, I said, you know what, I know that my vote counts, yes, and my voice needs to be heard. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I appreciate your time, and your voice was heard, and in fact, the first person in line. Sarah, back to you.
It is wonderful to see Americans who really understand that it's so important to take part in this part of our country. She knows her vote counts, and she was there bright and early, the first one in line. That was lovely. Isabel Rosales, thank you so much for bringing that to us. John?
And they're early to vote for one of the major candidates, one of the big ones, one of the two. But it really was reassuring to hear someone who thought through the issues so clearly and went out to vote because she wanted her voice heard. Okay, F around and find out. The new warning from Philadelphia's district attorney for anyone planning to intimidate voters in that key battleground state.
Anybody who thinks it's time to play militia, F around and find out. If you're going to try to turn an election into some form of coercion, if you're going to try to bully people, bully votes or voters, you're going to try to erase votes, you're going to try any of that nonsense, we're not playing. F around and find out. That's what we're going to do.
Welcome back. We are live in Pennsylvania, and what you are looking at right there are live pictures across the country. We have Maryland, which is polls are open in Maryland, Georgia, polls are open in Georgia, and Wisconsin, where my friend Sarah is standing by. Polls will be opening there in the next hour. Back here in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, this morning, we know that the candidates, well, they're basically back at home, but some of their final stops were right here in Pennsylvania, where polls are now open across the Commonwealth. Vice President Kamala Harris, she closed out her campaign by crisscrossing Pennsylvania, ending at the Philadelphia Museum of Art on the iconic Rocky Steps. Donald Trump spent part of election eve rallying supporters in Pittsburgh, and he then wrapped it all up where he did in 16 and 20 in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And the mood and the messages from the two candidates as we kind of start off and kick off this election day could not be more different. What does all of this mean for battleground Pennsylvania? Joining me right now is CNN host, political commentator, and Pennsylvania native, the one and only Michael Smerconish. I don't know what you've got where you are, Michael. I've got a DJ DJing the polls here at Ben Salem High School, which we're going to have throughout the morning. But you are also in Bucks County. Talk to me about where you are and what Bucks County represents in terms of Pennsylvania and where it could be headed.
Okay, Kate Baldwin, welcome to my hometown, Doylestown, Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is the county seat. Behind me, the iconic County Theater, where I'll have you know, in high school, I saw the movie Slapshot 12 nights in a row. My buddy was the ticket taker. Bucks County, as you know, is the most purple of the Philly burbs. If it all comes down to Pennsylvania, it's all going to come down to the Philly burbs. Donald Trump has lost this county twice, but by different margins. If he can keep it as close or win it as it was in 2016, it'll be a good sign for him. If the margin out of Bucks County is as it was in 2020, it's problematic for Donald Trump, and it's good news for Kamala Harris. What's interesting is that the county is shaped like a rectangle. You're in Lower Buck, which tends to be dense and Democratic, and the further north you move, the more rural and conservative it becomes. Where I am in Doylestown, my hometown, where I was born and raised, is really a purple area. And as I say, this is the purplest of those collar counties. So if you know what's going to happen here, you have a pretty good insight into how this all turns out.
Yeah, I've gotten some good insight just this morning. And speaking to, we spoke to the first voter who was heading in this morning. She lined up more than an hour before. She said she wanted to be here to vote in person. She was voting for Donald Trump because she said what her focus was the economy, the border, and foreign policy. Spoke to two other women who also were early in line, Michael, and they said they voted for Kamala Harris because their main issue this time around is women's rights. One of the women telling us, you don't get to tell me what I do with my body, which really, in just those two interactions, encapsulates what this election is all about, and the two very different realities, basically, that it seems that the candidates are offering at the end of this campaign. What are you hearing from your listeners and from everyone you're interacting with in Pennsylvania on not where this campaign began, but where this campaign is ending for people?
You know, if you were a half hour further north, closer to me, maybe that number one voter in the morning would have been my mom, because I think she's already been to the polls. I think this is a nice encapsulation of where the race is nationally, right? For women, it's largely about abortion rights, the way that it has been. For Republicans, it's about immigration. It's about their perception of the economy. In the big picture sense, the reason why I think where you are and where I am right now is so important is that this is an election that is a battle for suburbia. It used to be, Kate Baldwin, that it would be Philadelphia, versus the rest of the state, beginning with those collar burbs. But the collar burbs, and not just in Pennsylvania, all across America, suburbia has become increasingly Democratic, increasingly purple. I went back and I looked at Pennsylvania maps since I came of age here in 1980, and it's amazing to see the change that has taken place. The rural areas, Republican, the urban areas, Democratic, suburbia, increasingly purple and Democratic.
One thing that we know is votes come in slowly in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And so just because of the rules, and we can talk more about that, but that means that it's very, very likely we won't have a result here in Pennsylvania at the end of the night, maybe not even into tomorrow. And in that lag is where their fear can be stoked and conspiracies can be launched. And we saw that in 2020. And we've heard, even just yesterday, Donald Trump suggesting that cheating isn't already happening, unfounded his accusation that it could be happening very soon in Pennsylvania. How is that conversation landing, do you think, this time around, considering the mess post-vote in 2020 that we all lived through?
So I voted by mail like many other Pennsylvanians. I did it about 10 days ago. 25 minutes ago, when the polls opened, was the first time they could touch my ballot and all the other mail ballots because we don't allow pre-canvassing. That's what you're describing. And it's a shame. I wish the legislature could get its act together, because then we'd know a victor tonight. But as you point out, the likelihood is that it's going to go into the wee hours of tomorrow morning. And if it's a close election, what I'm most concerned about, and I'm so glad you're bringing this up, is to tell everybody, be cool, keep your powder dry. It doesn't mean that any tomfoolery, any election chicanery has taken place. It's just the way we count our ballots in Pennsylvania. So remember, last time, Wolf Blitzer called the election the Saturday after, and that's when CNN was finally able to make a call. And why was CNN able to make a call the Saturday thereafter? Because of Pennsylvania. It could happen again tonight. Then again, if these polls are all off in a similar fashion, maybe it's not as close as people suspect.
That's the fun of today. It could be a long time, or it could be super quick. We'll find out together, and that's the beauty of today, is we really don't know. What I'm noticing now, though, is I'm sitting in a cloud here. The fog has set in at Ben Salem High School, which is really fun. It's great to see you, Michael. Thank you so much. Happy Election Day.
You too, Kate.
All
Thank
right,
you.
so as we're talking about Pennsylvania, the center of the universe once again. Donald Trump made 2 stops here in Pennsylvania yesterday before closing out his campaign in Grand Rapids, Michigan, taking time in his final speech to rehash old grievances, even his disdain for Nancy Pelosi.
She's a crooked person. She's a bad person. Evil. She's an evil, sick, crazy. Oh, no. It starts with a B, but I won't say it. I want to say it.
All right, you were looking at live pictures from a voting site in Manchester, New Hampshire. I believe I was at that very voting site for the New Hampshire primaries. Gosh, I can't remember back that far. Back in the winter, here we are on Election Day. New Hampshire casting its ballots this morning. The last Republican to win in New Hampshire was George W. Bush in 2000. Been a fairly safe Democratic state ever since, so the margins can be tight. All right, as we approach the poll closings tonight, I want to give you kind of a guide of what to watch based on the times the polls close in the key swing states. This is the map right now, basically nothing. I want to go back to 2020, a race that Joe Biden won, to give you a sense of how things might shape up. Georgia, the polls closed at 7 o'clock. It was razor thin here 4 years ago. Joe Biden won, but barely. One county I want to watch tonight is Fayette County. This is just outside Atlanta. This is one of those counties that's been trending Democratic. You can see Donald Trump won it, but by about 7 points 4 years ago. In 2016, he won it by about 20 points. So it's been moving towards the Democrats' column. Will it continue to move that way? Watch early. If it moves toward Harris, might be a good sign for her. If Trump is able to spread his lead out again, might be a sign things are trending his way. North Carolina, the polls close at 7:30. This was the state that Donald Trump won in 2020, but by the smallest margin. He's been there 4 times in the last few days, so they're playing a little bit of defense there. One county I'm watching in North Carolina is Nash County. Now, this is a county that Joe Biden won 4 years ago, even though he lost the state. He won it by 120 votes. It's pretty close there. 4 years before that, you can see Donald Trump won Nash County when he won the state, and he won it by, less than 100 votes. So as goes Nash County, maybe we can get a sense of where things are going over the course of the night. Pennsylvania, kind of the Rose Bowl of primary states, the granddaddy of them all. We're all watching Pennsylvania so closely. Joe Biden won by 80,000 votes in 2020. Trump won by about 40,000 in 2016. Erie County. Erie County is a county that Joe Biden won by 2,000 votes in 2020. You guessed it, Donald Trump won by about 2,000 votes in 2016. So it is something of a swing county. It could tell us where things are headed. But if you're looking for Erie County to get a sense of how the night is going, you might have to wait. I want to remind you about how Pennsylvania went 4 years ago. The polls closed at 8. You can see at about 10 o'clock in Erie, Donald Trump was actually taking the lead in the poll count. It wasn't until all the way Friday morning. It was Friday morning of election week when Joe Biden went ahead in Erie and stayed ahead there. Ultimately, we called Pennsylvania for Joe Biden on Saturday. So Erie County is a bellwether, but it might be a late-breaking bellwether. Finally, I want to talk to you about Wisconsin very quickly. The polls closed there at 9. One county that's something of a bellwether there is Door County. You can see Joe Biden won in Door County. He won Wisconsin. He won by about, less than 300 votes. 4 years before, when Donald Trump won Door County, he won by less than 500 votes. So it could give you a sense of what's happening in Wisconsin if you're willing to stay up all night. Let's go now to Wisconsin. Our very own Sarah Seidner is there. Hello, friend.
I am certainly willing to stay up all night because it's election night. It's election day in America. So of course we are excited about being here. I am in the idyllic, picturesque town of Cedarburg, Wisconsin. It is one of the blue wall states, of course, that we are watching this morning, along with Pennsylvania and Michigan. Trump won those in 2016, then Biden flipped them in 2020. Joining me now is Tracy Setti, who is the city clerk of Cedarburg. Thank you so much. I know that you always say, I'm used to being behind the scenes, but you have good information, so we're coming to you. Can you give me a sense of what will happen here in this gym? This is the only place in Cedarburg that people are going to be voting in person, correct?
That is correct, yep. This is our one polling location for the entire city.
Okay, what happens? They come in and...
So the flow of it is that they come in through the front doors. They will check in at one of our electronic poll books. They will get a number, a voter number, and it will include their ward number, which then they will take to one of these tables, and that's where they get their ballot. And then they go to one of the booths, they vote their ballot, and then they put it in the machine, which is right behind you there. And then they exit here, so that's kind of the flow.
There's a flow to get people in and out as fast as possible. Can you give me some sense of exactly how you get the votes to where they need to go to be finally counted and get an official count? There's a lot of fodder out there. There's a lot of conspiracy theories. How does it work? It's a pretty sort of very secure thing that you do.
It is. I think in Wisconsin we're somewhat unique because it all happens right here. So we have all the people voting in person that put their ballots in the machines. And we have an entire team of absentee people that just process the absentees. They'll be doing that probably all day. My goal is that we have it all finished by the time 8 o'clock comes around. And those ballots are getting put in the same machines. So it all happens here.
The counting happens here, and then that is sent on to the county, and then it goes up and up and up. Let me ask you about the difference between 2020 and 2024. What are you seeing as far as the numbers of people voting?
It's really interesting. Well, Cedarburg in general has always had a really high turnout for November elections, like 90-ish%. So that's not surprising, but the absentee rate is somewhat surprising because 2020 we saw like about a 65% turnout in absentees, and we're seeing close to those numbers again in this election. But in 2020 there were more mailed ballots, and in 2024 there's more people absenteeing in person. But in the end, it's still about the same absentee number, so it's kind of interesting.
It's a huge number of people who vote. It makes me very happy to see that. Also, what makes me very happy is that you came here with us this morning and you're wearing your sparkly Americana earrings. Really appreciate that. Thank you, Tracy Setti. Really appreciate your time this morning. And back to you, John. That's how things are going to work here in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, and across the state.
You make sure of that. All right, Sarah Seidner in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. Thank you very much. With us now, Republican strategist, former Marco Rubio presidential campaign manager Terry Sullivan, the political anchor for Spectrum News, Errol Lewis, former communications director for Vice President Harris, Jamal Simmons, and CNN political commentator S.E. Cupp. You can see how excited I am. I'm slurring already, and I haven't even had a drink, as far as any of you know.
Coffee cup.
It's not even 8 a.m., John.
There's no feeling. I mean, it gets to the issue here, which is there's no feeling like election morning, when really, any tweet you make, any analysis you give here could decide the whole election, right? Actually, I want to hit that point very quickly to both the political professionals, Jamal and Terry. Terry, first to you. Really, how helpless of a feeling is it on the morning of an election like this?
Oh, it's awful. Now, my tradition used to be on election days when I ran campaigns was to go get a haircut. The day of but it's been a few years since I've. But no, look, it's a there is an important get out the vote component to it for the field teams. But if you're in communications, if you're managing a campaign, it's an awful day and it's super long.
Oh, he's absolutely right. I mean, there's nothing worse than being a press guy in the middle of a election day because there are no stories that matter. Maybe there used to be in the old days that midday lunch stories. You'd go out to one of the places like where Sarah is right now, and you'd kind of facilitate a watch so everybody can see what's happening. And then after that, you're just sitting around like going to the movies, waiting for something to happen because something might happen, but usually nothing does.
All right, now that we've cleared that up, how awkward we all feel right now. Let's talk about the one major thing you are looking for. S.E.
Well, it's one thing. It's ghost voters. We know where all the base voters are for both of these candidates, but there are pockets of ghost voters for both. Mainland Puerto Rican residents who almost never vote typically, historically. Will they come out for Kamala Harris in the wake of that MSG rally? We don't know. Kamala Harris has a number of young, college-aged women who have expressed enthusiasm for her and have never voted before. Can never trust if college kids are going to come out. We don't know. There are pockets in Pennsylvania and steel towns like Reading and Allentown where Hispanic men have been indicating they plan to vote for Trump. Will they? So these are the X factor unknown voters that we can't really poll, and we won't know until they actually go ahead and do the thing. What's going to happen?
Errol?
Yeah, the question is who shows up, right? Yeah. I thought the most interesting thing about that final poll out of Iowa is that it showed that women, especially older women, women over 50, seem to be breaking towards Kamala Harris. If that's true as a trend, either in the Midwest or even nationwide, then I think a large national narrative starts to take shape about this being the first national election since Roe versus Wade was overturned. Anybody who's over 60 for sure, and maybe 50, would remember that Roe versus Wade was important and that there was an era before it and that your relatives lived through it. And if this was the first chance to weigh in on that at a voting booth for millions and millions of women, is this going to be their verdict on that decision? The polls suggest that it might be.
Jamal?
Yeah, so a couple things. First of all, I wanted to see how many women are voting. What's the spread between women and men? Kamala Harris is overperforming with women. If you see a 10-point spread between the number of women who vote, the number of men, 9, 10, which is what it was before, she should be okay. Secondly, I look at the city of Detroit, place where I'm from. In Detroit, they're looking at you need a 52% voter turnout in order for her to be competitive in the state. They're looking at 55 minimum. If they get closer to 60, it's pretty much a wrap for the state. Same thing in Philadelphia. 500,000 net votes out of Philadelphia will get her competitive. They get over 500, 550, she's probably wrapped Pennsylvania.
Terry?
Yeah, look, I think as the night starts, the first thing you're going to start getting in are these East Coast numbers in states like North Carolina and Georgia. And those will come in first. And what we see happens there will kind of be a predictor. Trump should win them. He's favored to win them. The question is the margins. So if he just ekes out a win or doesn't win one of those, it is going to be a bad night for Trump. If he wins those comfortably, 3-4 points, it could be a very bad night for Kamala Harris. And so that's going to be the first indicator of the night.
Yeah, you know, the problem has been that Georgia and North Carolina we didn't call until after we actually called the presidential race 4 years ago. At least in Georgia, we have a sense they're going to count more quickly this time. We're going to have to see. Errol, events in the last week, all right, as we've had this run up to the election, anything that you can point to that you think mattered?
Maybe that horrible rally at Madison Square Garden where all of those disparaging remarks about Latinos were made and just the overall crude, kind of obscene comments that were made from the podium might have made an impact only because we know that across multiple platforms, including digital platforms, a lot of Latino community activists were really just red hot, even before that night was over. And it was in key swing states like Pennsylvania and Florida and Georgia that those kind of votes can make a big difference.
I see.
What was the question?
The question is something that mattered at the end.
Yeah.
Or who's had a better closing.
Well, I think Errol's right. That rally could be determinative. Another year, maybe not, but it's so tight, it could actually make a difference. But I've been telling people, as of the past week, 75 million Americans have already voted. That's a third of the voting population. The rest who plan to will come out today. I know everyone's anxious. It's over. Relax. Nothing you can do about it now. Go vote, but nothing you can do about it. And that goes for the campaigns, too. I really think in the closing days, unless some Deus Ex Machina event had happened, it is baked. It is in. They've done all they can do. And I really think in the last few weeks, Trump kind of decided, moderates, independents, I'm not getting any more. I'm just going to run to the base. So I think it's been decided for some time.
Yeah, I think that last point for me is really right. It's maybe not one individual thing, although the Madison Square Garden rally is a big thing. It's the collective spirit of what's been happening the last week or two. Collectively, I think Donald Trump is making Kamala Harris's argument. He's going dark, he's going fearful, she's going big, fun, and hopeful. Right? So that's the choice. And frankly, this is the most stark choice between two presidential candidates I've seen in my entire lifetime. Demographically, geographically, they're from opposite coasts, and how they're running their campaigns. Again, his is full of fear, trying to anger everybody. Hers is trying to bring everybody together into a big tent.
Terry?
You know, I look at these campaigns, and you got to remember all the data that we have, they've got more. They've got better data than we have, both campaigns. So I watch what they're doing, and it's interesting that you're right. Trump has become, from what was a very disciplined campaign for most of the cycle by Trump standards, this last week or two, he's become very undisciplined. That could mean a sign of confidence. We don't know, but it's
he's scared.
Could be, but
he's given up on those voters, right?
But the other point is where they're traveling. And he traveled to Virginia and New Mexico this week. That is either insane or you know, they're looking to really run the score up.
Well, and very important, he passed up an invitation to be at the Penn State-Ohio State game in a stadium that seats 100,000 people in Pennsylvania. He didn't go to Happy Valley.
Yeah, but people don't go to those games to see political candidates, so that might be a...
Well, fair enough, but, you know, I mean...
But he goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Randomly, you could get out of a crowd of 100,000, you could pick up a few thousand votes.
And look, I mean, he also went to North Carolina 4 times in the closing days, which indicates that they do see a need to play some defense there. And North Carolina is defense for the Trump campaign. What I get from all of you is that there really are 2 competing theories of this case here, and we're going to find out which one is right. I mean, is Donald Trump right that this election is going to come down to young men, maybe, or the male vote, or is the Harris campaign right? And this is a bet they've made in the whatever 100 days she was actually running, that it's suburban women and maybe disaffected Republicans.
Yeah, she went all in fairly early on and closed out with Liz Cheney for exactly that reason. That's somewhat risky for a Democrat. I mean, they've been disappointed by trying to get suburban women. You know, look at 2016.
Although it's not as risky as it has been in the past, because what we saw after Dobbs is that there was a big rush of women to the anti-MAGA position, the pro-abortion rights position. That happened in referenda in states as far as Kansas, and it happened in elections like the midterms.
But Trump seemed to write off the suburban woman disaffected Republican, a.k.a. Bessie Cup. He told Nikki Haley and Nikki Haley voters, we don't want you. We don't want your vote. He could have chosen Nikki Haley. He could have made specific overtures to the very voting demographic that is left that he needs. And instead, he held rallies, the likes of which repel those very voters.
S.E. Jamal, Errol, Terry, thank you very much. In closing, I think we all agree it will all come down to turnout. Kate?
Yeah, wise.
Thank you, Captain Obvious. We will get back to you very soon. So, protecting democracy on Election Day. We have new information on how the FBI is keeping a close eye on election-related threats. And also, weather can be a real factor when it comes to Election Day and voter turnout, how a cold front and storms could affect the trip to the polls for some. We have your Election Day forecast. We will be right back.
All right, you're looking at live pictures from Fulton County, Georgia. That is Atlanta, Georgia. Of course, very close 4 years ago. Considered a swing state this time around. Polls closed there at 7 o'clock. If you live in the greater Atlanta Metroplex, you still have time to vote. You can see. Doesn't appear to be lines there right now. Get out. Go cast your vote. In the meantime, happening now, a Georgia poll worker has been charged with sending a bomb threat to his county election office. The Department of Justice says the 26-year-old pretended to be a voter in a letter that warned his fellow election workers to, quote, watch every move they make and look over their shoulder, and ended with, quote, P.S. boom, toy in early vote place, cigar burning, be safe. The FBI is investigating the case. They have also set up a national command post to monitor and respond to election-related threats. CNN Chief Law Enforcement and Intelligence Analyst John Miller is with us right now. Tell us about this command post. What does it do?
So this command post has been in operation before in other elections. It's actually located in SIOC, which is the FBI's Strategic Information and Operations Center. It's where they run every crisis and keep their thumb on the pulse of ongoing events. But in this case, they've sectioned off a large piece of it, and that is for election only. So what you've got in there is you've got the U.S. Secret Service, you've got the FBI Criminal Division, Counterintelligence Division for actions by other countries, Counterterrorism Division by something that could be spinning up here, a dozen agencies with dozens of people, about 80 per shift, 24/7, going at least through the end of the week, and then longer if it has to.
As you said, it's been in place before. A sense that this time maybe their efforts are at a higher level?
So, definitely. And why? A couple of things. One, I think they learned some lessons from January 6th about underestimating some of the dynamics around the passions and political divide in the country. But also, if you look at the lead up to this, what do we have? You know, in October, we had an individual who said he was inspired by ISIS, who with another was going to shoot up Election Day locations out in the Midwest. And this was straight up terrorism. Without picking a side. You've got the individual in Australia who was a registered Russian agent who was doing deep fakes of Haitian immigrants illegally voting on video through right-wing posters. You've got the plot, what was it, yesterday, by an individual in Tennessee to attempt to blow up the power grid with explosive-laden drones. So you see around the election, adjacent to the election, foreign espionage interference, chat rooms full of threats to send armed people to polling locations, terrorist plots. It's a lot going on.
And you mentioned January 6th. How does sort of wanting to make sure that doesn't happen again factor in?
So the knock on the FBI, the Secret Service, DHS, fair or not, around January 6th was they had all the intelligence that there was going to be disorder, that it could be large, before the storming of the Capitol, and A, they didn't share it widely enough, and B, they weren't prepared enough because they didn't consider it as credible as it was. So in this case, they're leaning way forward. Way more people in this command center this time around, a larger number of agencies, more FBI components in there on the idea that we've got to be able to respond immediately, but more important, this is a national effort. So when the intel comes in, if it's actionable, get it to the field office and to the state and local police and law enforcement people and get them on top of it right away.
Oh, hopefully they won't be necessary, but good to have them there. John Miller, thank you very much. Kate?
So the weather on Election Day can have a real impact on voter turnout, especially when you're talking about some critical battleground states. Let's go over to CNN's Derek Van Dam, who's tracking all of this for you. Derek, I know the forecast here in in Bucks County. It's a little foggy now, but I'm told by very good sources it's going to be a beautiful day. But what are you watching?
Yeah, there's a couple curveballs out there this morning that we're watching, mainly this low deck of cloud that's providing you the fog northeast of Philadelphia. But that's not the major story, because in your swing state, things are looking pretty decent all in all, especially later this afternoon. It's here across the nation's midsection, the upper Midwest, and into the mid-Mississippi River Valley. This area is getting pummeled by heavy rainfall right now. So the swing states of Michigan and Wisconsin, it's going to be a wet drive to the polls and could be a wet Election Day line if you have to stand outside. Here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, you can see the weather forecast looks pretty showery through the course of the day. And then I want to draw your attention to this constant band of rain that's falling over St. Louis. This has prompted the National Weather Service to issue a flash flood warning. That is extended. Some of the most rainiest days in November history, actually today and yesterday, falling in St. Louis. There are reports of some localized flash flooding on the roads in and around the metropolitan there. So take care if you're traveling to the polls this morning. That cold front advances eastward, but notice it doesn't make it all the way to the East Coast. So we're kind of sandwiched in between some nicer weather on the West Coast and the East Coast, including Philadelphia, where that low bank of clouds and fog will dissipate. We'll see some sunshine also into the battleground state of Georgia and near Atlanta and Fulton County. We should start to see the sun peek out throughout the course of the day today. Temperatures in the upper 70s. There is a cold front swinging in across the Intermountain West that'll provide some snowflakes, though, for the higher elevations. Kate?
Derek, thank you so much for that. And a new hour of CNN News Central starts now.
Happening now, Arizona, Texas, Wisconsin, you are on the clock. Polls opening in a huge batch of new states this morning. We have some pictures, I hope, from Grand Rapids, Michigan, also Springfield, Ohio. They should turn the lights up a little bit so people can see who they're voting for in those states. We are standing by to see if Donald Trump votes soon in Florida. Kamala Harris already voted by mail and will soon speak with radio hosts. Both candidates held rallies overnight.
We have an opportunity in this election to finally turn the page on a decade of politics that have been driven by fear and division. We're done with that. We're done.
We will defeat the corrupt system in Washington, Because I'm not running against Kamala. I'm running against an evil Democrat system. These are evil people.
I'm John Berman in New York. Sarah Seidner is in Wisconsin. Kate Baldwin is in Pennsylvania. It is on. This is Election Day in America.
And this is why it is so exciting. You can stop guessing, and now they can start counting the real votes. Voters get to have their say officially today. We are in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is the biggest swing county and the biggest swing state with its 19 electoral votes. Biden won this county and won Pennsylvania 4 years ago. This time around, nearly 2 million mail-in ballots have been received across the Commonwealth. They still have time to hand those mail ballots in by 8 p.m. tonight. Here in Bucks County, more than 120,000 mail ballots have been handed in. And the mail-in ballot here in Pennsylvania, the counting of them is a huge thing, especially in Philadelphia. With the rules in Pennsylvania, it can slow things down. The district attorney in Philadelphia offered a very clear warning to anyone looking to intervene, interfere, or get in the way this election day.
Anybody who thinks it's time to play militia, F around and find out. Anybody who thinks it's time to insult, to deride, to mistreat, to threaten people, F around and find out. We do have the cuffs, we do have the jail cells, we do have the Philly juries, and we have the state prisons. If you're going to try to bully people, bully votes or voters, you're going to try to erase votes, you're going to try any of that nonsense, we're not playing. F around and find out.
Polls are open across the Commonwealth. Right now, they open at 7 a.m. They close at 8 p.m. this evening. Here in Bucks County at Ben Salem High School, we saw people lining up more than an hour before the doors opened here to make sure they were first in line. Over to Sarah now in Battleground, Wisconsin. Hey, Sarah.
Hey, just seconds ago, a big announcement was made here in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. The 2024 polls for the election are now open. And the very first absentee ballot can now be counted. We are off to the races in what polls have predicted may be a razor-thin victory for either candidate in this state. Wisconsin is one of those so-called blue wall states. The big question this morning is, will the blue wall stand for Harris or crumble for Trump this election? The way Wisconsin counts its vote and the shift from Trump to Biden in 2020 after nearby Milwaukee was counted led Trump and his allies to begin unfounded questioning of the fairness of the election. Cedarburg, by the way, which is a picture-perfect town with an extremely high voter turnout to the tune of 90%, this city has voted Republican for every single presidential election since 1936 until 2020, when it broke blue for Joe Biden. With its 12,000 plus voters, Biden won by just 19 votes then. And it foreshadowed what happened in the entire state of Wisconsin, which went to Biden by 20,000 plus votes. The weather, by the way, not picture perfect, though the town is. It is raining here. But there are already 50 people who were outside in line long before the doors even opened, and now they are all coming in. You can hear the excitement, and you can see all the folks behind me and the poll workers. They're doing their job. The first vote was cast just 2 minutes ago. Kate?
I will take it, Sarah. Thank you very much. As you can see, the polls open behind Sarah in Wisconsin. They're open in Georgia and North Carolina as well, and they will be two of the key swing states where the polls close the earliest at 7 and 7:30. Miguel Marquez in Wilmington, North Carolina. Nick Valencia is in Lawrenceville, Georgia. Miguel, let's first go to you. What are you seeing this morning?
Long lines. Look, I want to show you what's happening outside the Moose Lodge here in Wilmington. People who have been voting in Wilmington all their lives say they have never seen lines as long at this precinct. This is short. This is about 30, 40 people in line right now. They've had at least 75 or 100 since the polls opened at 6:30 this morning. We've spoken to tons of voters. Why are we here? It's a purple county in a purple state. Both campaigns have been working very, very hard here. We spoke to voters sort of on both sides. All of them say at the end of the day, they just hope the country is a little closer to normal.
I hope it's a Harris Waltz runaway. I have several friends that are
Trumpers. No problem with that. They vote who they want to vote. My main concern is that when you see me broke down, stop and pick me up. I don't care who you voted for. I want to be a community again.
I feel there's a lot of hatred out there, and I would like to see less of that. You know, less violence, all that stuff. It'd be nice if people would learn to, like, speak their mind, but also respect other people's opinions.
So keep in mind, most voters in New Hanover County, where we are, and across the state have already voted early, but the lines are still very long. The campaigns are also out here. We have a Democratic tent. There's a Republican tent out here. There are workers who are handing out sample ballots to voters as they are in line. It looks like it's going to be nonstop. Polls close here at 7:30 p.m., and it looks like they're going to have a line like this, if not longer, throughout the entire day. Gives you an idea of just how motivated people are on both sides. Back to you guys.
All right, Miguel Marquez in Wilmington, North Carolina. Let's get to Nick Valenti in Lawrenceville, Georgia. What are you seeing there, Nick?
Hey, good morning, John. There was also a line out the door this morning of about 25 people starting at 7 this morning. Most of them, though, confused that they couldn't vote in person here. This is the county registrar's office. It was an option to vote early in person here, not an option on Election Day. I want to give you a tour here of this office. It's mainly an operations center and an administrative center come Election Day. And those voters who were turned away, they were helped out by volunteers like those that I'm going to show you here, given those information for their precincts. There's 156 precincts all throughout Gwinnett County. It is a consequential county for both the Republican candidate and the Democratic candidate in this race. Georgia has become a battleground for 2 decades. Republicans dominated this until 2020, when Joe Biden became the first Democratic presidential nominee to win it since 1992. It's going to be a busy day here, a lot busier as the day goes on. This is where the tabulation is going to happen here, just in that glass bowl area beyond. And this is the man that's going to be at the center of it all, Zach Manifold. You're the election supervisor. Thank you so much for taking the time with CNN. How are things looking out there?
It's been a pretty quiet morning, so we always like to see that. It's been pretty smooth so far, so feeling pretty good.
Tabulation starts at 9 a.m. Walk us through what's going to happen and when we will start seeing those official batch of numbers coming out of Gwinnett County.
Yeah, so we have a team that's sequestered starting at 9 a.m. And they'll start closing out all those scanners from the advanced voting locations.
And that happens right back here, right, through those doors?
Yep. Our preps are in the back. About 300,000 people voted on those scanners from advanced voting, so they'll start closing those out, and they'll run the tabulation tapes, and then they'll start feeding in the memory cards from those, and that'll be a process that's going on basically all day until we can finally publish results after 7 o'clock.
And just quickly, you guys shattered records for advanced in-person voting. What do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I think it's the voters moving back to the traditional voting pattern here in Gwinnett. People really love in-person voting and advanced voting, and I think we did a good job of making sure that, hey, people, like, get out there, vote before there's any lines, and we had very little lines for those 300,000 voters.
Well, we know you're going to be busy today. Thank you so much again for taking the time with CNN. Gwinnett County, one of those counties in the battleground state of Georgia that's in the center of it all. John?
Yeah, it's a county the Democrats need to win big if they want to win in that state. All right, Nick Valenti and Miguel Marquez, thanks to both of you. Kate.
Battleground, Pennsylvania, and the battleground county of Bucks County. We're outside Bensalem High School. There are 3 precincts that actually vote here, so there's a lot of foot traffic and a lot of action. We even have someone DJing the polls because it is that cool here. Joining me right now is one cool cat himself, former Republican congressman from Pennsylvania, Charlie Dent, someone who knows Bucks County and the area oh so well. What are you feeling and thinking about as everyone's heading in here today?
Well, I'm looking at this county, Bucks County, which is one of the collar counties of Philadelphia, of the 4 collar counties. It's the most competitive county. Joe Biden won it by 4 or 5 points in 2020. And so we're all kind of watching what's going to happen. I suspect that Kamala Harris will win this county because there are a lot of soft Republicans, even though the registration is slightly more Republican.
Because that's been a trend since 20. There has been an increase in Republican registration, right?
The party out of power oftentimes does pick up registrations. But you got to remember, this county is one where we've always had in the suburban Philadelphia what I would call soft Republicans. These are people who were registered Republican, but were often functionally Democrats in presidential elections. And the opposite was true in the southwestern part of the state. We got a lot of registered Democrats who were functional Republicans. And now more people have aligned their voter registration with their voting habits. That's changed over the years, but that's where we are today. But this county, watch it, because this will be the most competitive county. Kamala Harris needs to run run up the score here in Bucks County.
It's not just winning; it's running up the margin, right?
Correct. Everywhere. And if you remember what happened in 2020 in Pennsylvania, Donald Trump only really did better in one county in 2020 than he did in 2016, and that was Philadelphia, of all things. Everywhere else he did marginally worse. But this is where Kamala Harris has to win big in these collar counties. That was a difference for Joe Biden in 2020.
They often see Bucks County as a bellwether, how this is going to go, how Bucks will go, maybe the Commonwealth will go. Who are the candidates trying to turn out specifically, you think, in Bucks County? Who have they been targeting? Who are they speaking to?
Well, in terms of voters?
Yeah.
Well, look, you have a very strong congressman here, Brian Fitzpatrick. An incumbent, he's expected to win. And a guy like Brian Fitzpatrick knows that there are ticket splitters in this county. So he needs to get not only the Republican vote, but he also has to pick up independents and some Democrats. And he's got a long established brand, but it's hard for candidates like him who are a bit more moderate to prevail. So he's got to actually talk to the center of the electorate, unlike the presidential candidates, or at least Trump anyway, who's really doubled down on his base, and that's all he seems to be talking to.
What about the kind of, we were talking about it off air, the low propensity voter that the Trump campaign is hoping to help them get it over the finish line here?
Yeah, that just makes me nervous. If I'm a candidate, I don't want to rely on the least reliable voters. So these low propensity voters, I think we might call them 1 of 4 voters, people who might vote, who maybe only vote in presidential years, if that. They're trying to pull these people out. I'm not sure how successful they're going to do it. I think the Harris campaign is also trying to pull out low propensity voters too. But I'd hate to put the faith of my campaign in the people who are the least reliable, and that's what at least seems like Trump is trying to do. And we'll see if he'll be successful. I think it's a pretty tough slog.
What are the early signs you're watching for here in Pennsylvania? We know we lived through it in 2020 together. Pennsylvania can, because of the rules that still haven't changed, the returns can come in slowly, especially with the mail ballots. What are you going to be watching for early here?
Well, I keep looking at turnouts of women, and that's what I've been seeing, and to make sure that if these women voters are coming out at the numbers that we are told, I think that's a very good omen for Kamala Harris. And we saw that in some of the early votes. Women are coming out in heavier numbers. And it seems to me that while everybody's talking about the economy as the top issue, and I think it is, but I'm not sure it's the most motivating issue. I think this abortion issue is the most motivating issue. If you look what happened post-Dobbs, Democrats have overperformed, not just in the midterm, but in many special elections. They have run well ahead of where they should have. Not that special elections will dictate what will happen today, but it's a lot of races where they've overperformed. And so this is the first presidential race post-Dobbs, and I think that's the big X factor here that we have to think about. We're not talking about it enough.
The unscientific poll of speaking to some voters this morning, we spoke with 2 women who said that they voted for Kamala Harris, and the issue was abortion rights, and them just saying, you don't get to tell me what to do with my body, and that's why they wanted to show up so early this morning to be some of the first people in.
Yeah,
so you get that.
I'm not at all surprised by that, and I think that's what we're seeing in a lot of places. And but right now, I'll tell you what, this watch, the other county to watch in Pennsylvania, just north of us here, Northampton County, which I represented, is probably the ultimate bellwether county. That county will likely, whoever wins that county will win the state, and probably the presidency. You could say the same about Erie County.
Yeah.
And watch Lackawanna County, where Scranton is.
It is anybody's game this morning, for sure, as they're just as voting is now underway, and it's great to see you. Thanks for coming by, Charlie. Go Lions, go Nittany Lions, apparently. Pennsylvania Pride here. Sarah, over to you.
All right, I am in Cedarburg, where it is just bustling. It is wonderful to see people here in this town take their civic duty really seriously. And of course, it's because it's Election Day in America. There are more than 79 million ballots that have already been cast because they voted early. We're taking a deep dive into the key blue wall states, including, of course, Wisconsin, and the counties everyone is watching today. Also, Kamala Harris and Donald Trump must now wait, like we all have to find out whose message has resonated more with voters. The New York Times is categorizing their final pitches this way: a grim Trump and an upbeat Harris. Also, a new report this morning that Russia is now suspected in a plot to start fires on board planes headed to the U.S. and Canada. We'll talk all about that coming up. This is just into CNN. The Justice Department has reached an agreement to keep monitors outside of Texas polling places. And in St. Louis, a federal judge ruled that Justice Department monitors can observe election sites there. We are also paying close attention to the blue wall states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and here in Wisconsin. Joining me now, CNN's Omar Jimenez. Omar, you're taking a look at this. Tell me what you can.
Yeah, so Wisconsin, one of those so-called blue wall states, the states Trump won in 2016, then Biden flipped in 2020. So let's start in Wisconsin. As you know, polls are already open, but before we even got to today, a little more than 1.5 million ballots were returned already. That's a little over 40% of their active voters. And while early voting by mail was down slightly, early in-person ballots cast were up over 40%. Women here also outpaced men in the early vote, as they did in all the blue wall states. And then when you look at the map here, we're keeping our eyes on the margins in Milwaukee and Dane counties, where Democrats typically win big, but also keeping an eye on the west and northern suburbs of Milwaukee, which have been historically Republican, but trended more Democratic in recent years. Those counties, by the way, led the state in early turnout. So the question is, when will we know? Well, they can already start processing early ballots now that polls are open. And in Milwaukee, the Election Commission had estimates all Election Day votes will be counted by close to 11 p.m. Eastern time, maybe earlier. Absentee ballots likely overnight. And for perspective, in 2020, CNN projected the race here for president within 24 hours of polls closing. But let's take a look at some of the other blue wall states, in particular Michigan. Polls are also already open here. Before we got here, though, over 3 million Michiganders voted either early or absentee, according to state data. That's about 44% among their active voter rolls. And when you look at the counties we're looking at, Wayne County, home to Detroit, where more people live than anywhere else in the state. And so we're really looking at the margins there. Biden won 68% of the vote there in 2020, but we're also going to keep an eye on Macomb County in the suburbs, which went for Trump in 2016 and 2020, but Obama in 2012. And then in the western part of the state, Muskegon County, outside Grand Rapids, it went to Biden by just 500 votes in 2020 out of the more than 90,000 votes cast there. The Secretary of State has said she hopes to have final results by midday Wednesday. And then last but not least, basically most, Pennsylvania. More electoral votes up for grabs than any other battleground state. Polls are open. Over 1.7 million absentee and mail-in votes have been returned so far. But let's take a look at some of the counties that can make a difference and be critical, especially when it comes to the margins. So Philadelphia County, but also the suburbs with big populations, Montgomery, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Collier counties as they're known. They all went to Biden in 2020. Same story when you head west to Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. And then if you look in the northwest, there's Erie, which Biden flipped in 2020 by less than 2,000 votes. Remember, it was this projection in 2020 that triggered the call for the presidency. Could play that same role this time around. But by the way, Secretary of State stressed patience, people. They have never had final official results on Election Day.
Puppy.
That's what he said. He's a love bug, but a jumper.
All right, Omar, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And here in Wisconsin, we're in Cedarburg. There are people lined up way outside of the polling place. It is an extremely, extremely busy time. And as we learned from the clerk, this place votes about 90% of active voters come in. We're expecting 95 potentially today. Back to you, Kate.
All righty, so coming up for us, high alert for Election Day, extra officers, bomb-sniffing dogs, how security has been stepped up at polling locations across the country. And we also have new details on how both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are planning to spend the day as America votes. You're looking live right now at pictures in Wilmington, North Carolina. Voters lining up. America voting, getting out to vote. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our special Election Day coverage. You're looking right now at Grand Rapids, Michigan. You can see voters' ballots in hand going into the scanner. Voting happening in Michigan and all across the country, as in many states, polls opened at 7 a.m. Eastern. This morning, we also have new reporting from inside the Trump campaign about how they are feeling today. And we're standing by to see if the former president will be voting soon this morning in Florida. Elena Treen is standing by in West Palm Beach, Florida for us. Elena, what are you hearing from Team Trump this hour?
Well, look, Kate, when I talk to his advisors, they say that they are cautiously optimistic, and I think that's all they can be at this point. They recognize how close this race is. That has not changed over the last several weeks. And so while they say they're cautiously optimistic, of course, there's some underlying anxiety, I'm told, about how today could go. Now, this isn't going to come as a surprise, but they say their main focus, the thing that really matters today in these final hours, is turnout. That is what all of this hinges on for both campaigns. I'm going to read for you what one senior Trump advisor told me about this, just to give you some insight into how they're feeling this morning. He said, quote, "We feel like we're in a position now where if the people who we think are going to turn out for President Trump turn out, then he ought to win. So it's a matter of achieving that. It's close. It's really close." Now, of course, they added the disclaimer that he's saying, I know it sounds ridiculous that this is, I'm saying this is all about turnout, but he said that is the only thing that we are focused on today. Now, I do want to get into the specifics because turnout in general, okay, we understand that is an issue for any campaign on this final election day. But they have a few things that they've been analyzing very closely. They've been poring over some of the early voting data, particularly over the last several days, that they are arguing have given them some spots for encouragement, but also spots of worry. One thing that has been very clear is that Donald Trump has a problem with women, and that is a problem that they have not been able to solve for as we are here on Election Day. But they tell me that they are encouraged somewhat by some of the data that they've seen of how men, and specifically male Democrats, are not showing up in the numbers that they had expected they would for the Harris campaign. They've also said that they feel encouraged by some of the signs that black voters and and urban voters are not turning out as much as they thought as well, but rural voters are. So these are just some of the tea leaves that they are reading. I cannot emphasize this enough, Kate, though, that we have no idea what is going to happen. The Trump campaign does not know what will happen. Polls do not close for several hours. So everyone's just kind of waiting by to see, how this will all turn out. But this is what they are doing today at Mar-a-Lago. Kate?
Yeah, a lot of tea leaf reading happening, I think, across the country and throughout the campaigns. Elena, thank you so much for standing by for us in Florida. Now, Kamala Harris, she spent her last day of campaigning here in Pennsylvania, where we are sitting this morning. And this morning, she's starting her day off in Washington, D.C. And CNN's Eva McCann is live at where Harris's campaign election watch party site is going to be at Howard University in Washington this morning. Eva, what are you hearing from the vice president's team and what they hope is the final message that she has now left with voters?
Well, Kate, the vice president telling supporters that in this close contest, every single vote matters. She ended her campaign in Philadelphia, what she described as the foundation of our democracy, on the Rocky Steps to sort of illustrate that the underdog can eventually claim the victory. And we were with her in Pennsylvania yesterday as she was crisscrossing the state. And it really illustrated how she has run her campaign more broadly, trying to appeal to such a diverse coalition of voters, right? Everyone from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to Liz Cheney under the same umbrella. Bottom line, the message from her is that she wants to be a president for all of America. And now, of course, it's time for voters to decide. But take a listen to how she's made this argument.
America is ready for a fresh start, ready for a new way forward where we see our fellow American not as an enemy, but as a neighbor. And we are ready for a president who knows that the true measure of a leader is not based on who you beat down, but based on who you lift up.
And Kate, when I spoke with her over the weekend in Atlanta, she told me that ultimately she believes that disagreement is healthy, and that's how it would inform a future potential presidency. But listen, we are going to hear from the vice president today. She's doing a series of radio interviews. Meanwhile, Governor Walz, her running mate, is going to be campaigning in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania today. And then it all ends here, where it began, at Howard University, a big homecoming for her this evening. Kate?
Absolutely. Eva, thank you so much. A busy, long day ahead for you. And as she is in D.C. at will be the watch party for For Kamala Harris, we continue to watch as voters are heading to the polls here at Bensalem High School in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Back to you, John.
And it's not just the Bensalem High School in Bucks County. We're live at polling places across the country that are opening their doors to voters, seen as Randy Kay and Renee Marsh are talking to voters in Florida and Virginia.
And we are here in Broward County, Florida, where we have seen a steady stream of voters coming into this voting place here, the polling place. And we spoke to one first-time voter from Puerto Rico. Wait till you hear what she has to say about her vote today.
And I'm Renee Marsh in Fairfax County, Virginia, where the foot traffic is also steady. I'll tell you what voters are saying is top of mind once they cast their ballots.
It is as busy as ever here at the community gym where voting has commenced in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. Across the country, and of course, people lining up to do the exact same thing because it is Election Day in America. Our team of CNN reporters is spread out across the country speaking with voters. Our Randy Kay is in Parkland, Florida, and our Renee Marsh is at a polling site in Burke, Virginia, a suburb of Washington, D.C. All right, let's begin with Randy. What are you seeing there so far?
Good morning, Sarah. We are seeing a pretty steady stream of voters here in Parkland, Florida. This is in Broward County, Florida. And we are talking to several of them. Of course, the issue here is people are coming. There's two very important ballot measures on the ballot here, of course, in addition to who they want to vote for president. Already more than 8 million Floridians have voted either early or sent in their mail-in ballots. And the issues here on the table are certainly one is Amendment 4, which is the abortion amendment, and the other one is Amendment 3, which is whether or not they should legalize recreational marijuana. But it's also a question of who is coming to vote, because as you know, there's a very large Haitian population here in Florida. The Harris campaign did the Democratic National Party did a big ad buy here because there's about 350,000 Haitians here in Broward and Miami-Dade County. And then also, of course, there's the Puerto Rican vote. 1.2 million Puerto Ricans live here in the state of Florida. And of course, you recall that those comments by that comedian that was at the Trump rally at Madison Square Garden talking about Puerto Rico being an island of garbage. Well, we happened to talk to one first-time voter here as she was heading in to vote. She is Puerto Rican, and listen to what she told me.
It's my first time voting.
Oh, you're a first-time voter. Who would you like to win?
Trump.
This bothers
me. I am Puerto Rican, so that was like, I was like, wow, like I don't really like that, you know. I don't know really. I really don't know, honestly. It's
so
hard.
as a Puerto Rican, you're okay with that, though?
No, definitely not. I just think, you know, like people, like everyone has opinions. Like, you know, if they don't like Puerto Ricans, it hurts, of course. But at the end of the day, I'm okay with who I am, and at the end of the day, I want to be able to have a better life in the future.
She thinks with Trump in office at the White House that she would have a better future, she told us. And she said this was a family decision, that they all spoke together as a family and talked about this, and this is what they decided to do. She does believe that she didn't get really any clear answers from Harris. I asked her why not Kamala Harris. She said when Harris was asked about what she would do to help people, she didn't hear a very clear answer from her, Sarah.
All right. Thank you so much, Randy Kay, for that. Now to my friend Renee Marsh in Virginia, where early voting wrapped up with some surprising numbers. What are you expecting there today?
Well, Sarah, the polls here have been open for about 2.5 hours, and we are certainly seeing a steady flow. I just spoke with the two precinct leaders here, and they say within those first 2.5 hours, they've seen hundreds, close to 600 voters come in. They're pleased with those numbers. As far as just speaking with the folks who are here and casting their ballots, I will say I've spoken to mostly Harris supporters. When you speak to those who have cast their ballot for Harris and you ask them what are the top issues, top of mind for them, they say democracy and they say abortion. However, we have found within the crowd of people casting their ballots here in Northern Virginia, Trump voters as well. And when you talk to them about their top issues, not surprisingly, they say immigration and economy. We spoke to one family, came out here as a family to cast their ballots. Here's what they had to say.
The top issue for me was the right to choose, abortion rights, women's health care. We have 2 little girls, and we want to make sure they have rights and freedoms and safety.
I've got 2 girls here, and I want to make sure their rights are taken care of, and they don't have to worry about anything.
Well, of course, 2.3 million absentee ballots have already been cast here in the state of Virginia. I've been speaking with the officials here at this precinct. The polls here will be open until 7 o'clock. Once they close, they say they have their procedures in place where they will begin the process of just counting how many ballots were cast. And then, of course, those ballots will be taken to the county for tabulation. Again, Sarah, what we're seeing here is steady turnout. And the stress levels and anxiety levels amongst people on both sides extremely high.
Yeah, it is, though, lovely to see both you and Randy Kaye talking to whole families who have come out to vote and do their civic duty, and that is a good thing. Thank you both so much. Appreciate your time this morning. John.
All right, with us now, Scott Jennings, CNN senior political commentator, and Maria Cardona, CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist. Look, we've been talking about how difficult it is actually on the morning of Election Day to have any real analysis, because it's just so hard to tell. I mean, we need to wait a few hours to wait and see. But is there any sense of where the momentum is? Does either candidate have any extra bit of juice heading into Election Day?
So I think, given everything that I've seen with the latest polls, with the early vote data, with the conversations I've been having with groups that are going door to door in some of the key battleground states, I do believe that Vice President Harris has the momentum here at the end. And what I'm seeing within that momentum, what is it that is pushing people to go to the polls and to break for her? And we have seen in the early data that the voters who have decided in the last 2 weeks are breaking for the vice president. I think that a lot of what we've been hearing from Donald Trump, the Madison Square Garden hate rally, the insult to Puerto Rico, calling it an island of trash, but it's not just that, it's everything else. And I know we've heard stories and talked to folks from his campaign and heard about folks from his campaign that are frustrated because he can't be on message. I think that has crystallized for voters, John, what another 4 years would look like.
So, Scott, very quickly, I'll let you answer the question I just asked, but whether the late-breaking voters, undecideds, are breaking toward Harris, have you talked to anyone in the Trump campaign that has a similar or different view to that?
Yeah, they have a different view. They think that the early voting data looks better for Republicans than it has in years past. Like, I've resisted the urge to overread this or just read the party's talking points because 24 is different than 20.
Right.
Okay, we were in a pandemic, people voted differently, and I don't know. And so I think the honest answer as we sit here this morning is we don't really know. I mean, the polling got really close. All these forecasters, ended up at a coin flip. But the Trump people do feel like they succeeded at a couple of things. One, convincing low propensity Republicans, some of them, to participate early. And two, they do feel like that they tracked down this election in the month of October. I mean, they were, Harris had a great rollout and led for a good chunk of the fall, but they really feel like she had a rough October and they tracked it down. And here we have arrived on Election Day at functionally a 50-50 race, and so I'll be as excited as anyone else tonight to watch the magic wall.
Good October, but did they have as good of a first few days of November?
Well,
late October into November.
I mean, and so the question really, to answer it, you'd have to know how many people were truly undecided as we got into the last few days of the election. Because Trump is in the election and everybody has an emotional, visceral reaction to Trump going into it already. I've just been skeptical that there were all that many people out there going, I need to research Donald Trump a little bit more. The real issue is, did Trump turn out the low propensity men? The people who aren't connected to the news, that don't do much in our politics. Did he turn them out or not? We'll find out tonight.
So on the early vote data, because it's not party talking points, I did do a deep dive with two friends of mine who are analysts on early vote data. Scott's right. This year is very different from 2020 and even from 2022. And you can't extrapolate and make comparisons and then try to divulge what is going to be the end game. You can't do that. So you're absolutely right about that, Scott. But what you can do is make comparisons party to party
and then look and see who those voters are. And so two things have emerged. Both parties are down in early vote from what they were in 2020. We expected that because it was a pandemic. And we've talked to groups of voters. For example, there are a lot of voters in the black community who have said they're going to vote on Election Day. A lot of women have said they're going to vote on Election Day because they're excited about doing it because they can, and they couldn't in 2020. That's number one. The second thing is that you can actually look at the early vote data and compare to see, were those voters who voted before in 2020? A lot of the voters that Republicans have seen or are in the early vote data are voters that voted in 2020. So right now there is no data that shows or proves that the strategy for low propensity voters that Republicans have hung their hat on is actually coming to fruition.
As we were joking, by the time the polls close tonight, there will be 0 undecided voters, right? The voters will, by definition, have decided.
That's
so we'll get
exactly
a sense
right.
of that.
My Election Day advice for every American: please, for the love of God, ignore early exit polls. If someone in your
Absolutely
life calls
agree
you
with
today
that.
and says, "I've got early exit polls," hang up on them,
don't
delete
believe
their
them.
contact out of your phone, go to a movie, whatever. Please, I beg of you, do not lose your marbles over early exit polls today. There's my Election Day advice.
And for the people who have not gone to go vote, please go vote. We have safe, fair, free elections. Our system is safe and secure. Please go vote.
This has been a public service announcement. I'm Rick Cardona, Scott Jennings. Our thanks to both
John.
of you. Kate?
I mean, that was amazing. And also, Scott, as if you said, don't lose your marbles, as if anyone still has any marbles left after this election cycle. But like, that's very optimistic of you. You're so cute. Okay, let's get back to it. Across the country, as voters are arriving at the polls, election officials are preparing for everything, let's be honest. A lot of work leading up to this day today, and a lot of hard work happening as we speak. You're looking at live pictures right now in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And the country's costliest strike in 25 years is over. New details inside the offer that Boeing workers just accepted. Breaking overnight, striking workers at Boeing voted to accept the company's most recent offer. The workers had rejected 2 previous contract offers. This final agreement now ends the country's costliest strike in more than 25 years. This strike stretched on for more than 50 days. This new deal includes an immediate pay raise, but does not restore the traditional pension plan that workers lost in 2014. Workers will be returning to work on Wednesday. Also new this morning, Western officials tell the Wall Street Journal that Russia is likely behind a plot to start fires on cargo and passenger planes headed to the United States and Canada. In July, 2 incendiary devices exploded at DHL facilities in Germany and the UK, and Western officials say that those were likely test runs. The Kremlin has denied any involvement. A U.S. government official tells CNN that there's no current threat to U.S.-bound flights. ESPN analyst and former NFL safety Jason Kelce is apologizing right now. This is after an incident that happened at Penn State where Kelce was on campus for ESPN's College Game Day on Saturday. As he was walking through a crowd, a fan followed him and directed a homophobic slur at him about his brother Travis, who's, as we know, dating Taylor Swift. Kelce then smashed someone's cell phone and repeated the slur back. Kelce admits he is not proud of his response.
I'm not happy with anything that took place. I'm not proud of it. And, you know, in a heated moment, I chose to greet hate with hate. And I just don't think that that's a productive thing. I really don't.
Penn State police say that they are investigating the incident. Sarah?
All right. Thank you, Kate. Polls have been open for just under an hour here in Battleground, Wisconsin, with heightened security measures in effect here in Cedarburg, which is a picturesque town, by the way. It is beautiful. Already we've seen a bomb-sniffing dog who did a sweep before the precinct opened. That's significant because they've never had to do this before, but they are taking extra precautions this year. Now, the vote here is expected this year to surpass 90% of those registered voters. This place takes voting very seriously. Joining me now, I want to discuss a little bit more with one of the hometown voters here, Heidi Rath. Thank you so much for being here. I'm going to have you come in close. Okay, I see you have your I voted, so you've done the thing. Give me some sense of just how busy you've seen it, maybe compared to 2020.
I feel that there's a lot of workers. Everything is running really smoothly. I was in line for maybe 5 minutes and I already got to vote. So it was quick, efficient. Everybody should come out and vote.
Got right through. This place, voters take it very seriously. I mean, this is a huge number of people who come in. 90% is higher than most of the country votes. Why was it important for you to come today, and what were the issues that really brought you out?
Well, you know, you can't really complain if you don't come vote. That's my opinion, and I'm just voting for the future for my daughter, and I hope that it all goes well, no matter what happens. I just hope that everybody comes together and we can move past this.
Do you have any sentiment about what has been happening during this election season? It has been a rough and tumble season.
It's definitely divided the country, and I hope that everybody can just come together once this is done today.
In the town of Cedarburg, when you look around you, when you get here, I noticed people are saying hi to each other. Have you seen people you haven't seen since last election? Because this is the only place in town, this gym, the community gym, where people come to vote.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people. It's really nice to see everybody from all over Cedarburg. You know, we all just run into each other. It's nice to see everybody come out and vote. I'm sure a lot of people did early voting, but either way, as long as you vote, that's your choice.
Cedarburg has this long history of voting Republican since 1936, but then it flipped in 2020. Will you tell me who you voted for and why?
I won't tell you who I voted for, and I won't tell you why. I'm just voting because I just think that it's the right thing to do, and I think that, you know, we have to keep our children in mind. That's what I think.
It is wonderful to have you here. There are a lot of people that want to keep their vote secret, and you certainly can here. They make sure that nobody can see who you're voting for, and then they put it into these two machines, and it will be counted. We will find out what the answer to everyone's question is, who won, probably overnight. Heidi, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and thank you for doing your civic duty.
Absolutely. Take care.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
All right, that is the scene here in Cedarburg. It has slowed down just a tad, but we're expecting another rush of voters. They are expecting potentially a historic turnout here in Wisconsin. John.
All right, Sarah, we are watching the results come in, and as you can see, as it stands at 8:57, 8:58 in the morning, it's tied right now. 0% for Vice President Harris, 0% for Donald Trump. There are two numbers here that are wrong, though. It's not 0 votes to 0 votes anymore, because we do have some votes tabulated from New Hampshire. I can push in here, and you can see way up here in Dixville Notch, they actually voted and released the results. 3 votes for Kamala Harris, 3 votes for Donald Trump. So it's still tied, 50-50. Dixville Notch, congratulations to you. You do this as a publicity stunt. It worked. We just talked about you. I do want to show you what we are watching tonight, looking back at 2020 right now, not New Hampshire. I want to go back into Pennsylvania for 1 second, because there were 2 counties in Pennsylvania that called it, that voted the same way, had the election correct in 2016 when Donald Trump won, and in 2020 when Joe Biden won. It's Erie County and Northampton County. I want to push in and give you a sense here. Joe Biden won Northampton by 2,000 votes in 2020. In 2016, Donald Trump won by about 5,000 votes. Biden was able to flip that. Obviously, Kamala Harris wants to do the same here. And Erie County, which we've talked about as close to 50-50 as you can get almost anywhere. Joe Biden narrowly edged out Donald Trump by 2,000 votes in 2020. In 2016, it was Donald Trump by 2,000 votes. So keep your eye on those 2 counties in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which might very well be the most important state in this election. We have a new hour of CNN News Central starting right now. All right, happening now. It is Election Day in America. You might have heard, and as you can see, the race is close, exactly tied right now. We have some live pictures from some places where people are voting. This hour, polls are now opening in Colorado, Montana, Nebraska, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. Congratulations to the Mountain West. Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, they will both vote today. We'll stand by to see if that happens this hour. Vice President Harris and Tim Walz, they already voted. Harris is hoping to become the first woman ever to win the White House. Donald Trump trying to repeat what Grover Cleveland achieved some 130 years ago after being voted out of office, being voted back in. We heard from both candidates at rallies overnight.
You get out the vote, they can't do anything about it, we win. In other words, to make you feel a little guilty, we would only have you to blame.
Your vote is your voice, and your voice is your power. Are you ready to make your voices heard?
And I'm John Berman in New York, Sarah Siders in Wisconsin, Kate Baldwell's in Pennsylvania. This is Election Day in America.
Polls have now been open for 1 hour and 1 minute here in Wisconsin, and it has been bustling. We are in Cedarburg, Wisconsin, a town of just about 12,000 people, which for decades has always voted Republican until 2020, when 19 people decided the vote here. They are expecting a potentially historic turnout of voters, from 90 to 95% of registered voters, and we've been seeing a steady stream of people come in. Wisconsin, obviously one of those blue wall states. The question is, will that wall be broken by Donald Trump, or will Harris be able to keep the state? We will see what happens. 20,000 people voted to make it so that Biden won back in 2020. And now everyone is waiting as they come through these polls and talk to the poll workers to see what the count is going to be. That count, by the way, probably won't be known until late into the night, potentially tomorrow morning. Kate?
All right, Sarah, thank you so much. We are here in Pennsylvania, battleground Pennsylvania, but first we want to show you some new video just in from Ohio. We have video, I'm told, of J.D. Vance arriving in Cincinnati to his polling location. This is just moments ago. J.D. Vance arriving to vote himself in person on this election day. That in Cincinnati, Ohio. And now back here in Pennsylvania, polls have been open for 2 hours now. Pennsylvania is the biggest electoral prize of the battleground states, 19 electoral votes, which is why this is the state, the place that both campaigns have spent the most time throughout the election season. And we're outside Bensalem High School in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. This is a critical swing county just north of Philadelphia, where both campaigns are hoping to run up their margin, because this could be such a tight race in the end, or not, as we keep saying. We have heard from both Trump voters and Harris voters here at Bensalem High School this morning. One voter we met is Scott Dinkins. He's lived here for 10 years, and he says he's voting for Kamala Harris. What would you say was, if there was one main issue that drove your vote this time, what was it?
It's always been having the most fit, sane commander-in-chief.
What about Donald Trump is not winning you over? Because this is, in Bucks, you've got, almost 50-50 when you're looking at it.
Correct, you do. He acts like a child to me. He's unfit and name-calling, just not what I'm looking for in a president at all.
Polls close here at 8 p.m., so we have a full day of voting ahead of us here. Let's get the very latest from both of the campaigns right now. CNN's Elena Treen is checking in with Team Trump. Has been getting really great reporting all morning long. Elena, what are you hearing?
That's right. And one thing I just want to say off the top here, Kate, is you just showed some of that video of J.D. Vance going to vote in person. Any moment now, we're standing by and waiting to see Donald Trump do the same here in West Palm Beach, where he'll be casting his vote. So stay tuned for that. We're expected to see it at some point this hour. But look, behind the scenes, Donald Trump's top advisors and those closest to him are huddling with him at Mar-a-Lago, and they are poring over some of the data. They're obviously watching a lot of the news. One thing that is very certain for everyone is that nobody knows what is going to happen. However, they are doing what they can to try and parse through the data that they have already. And really the main focus, and I've talked with you about this all morning, but the main focus for them is turnout. And it seems, of course it's turnout. It's not a novel idea, but I think the reason they keep emphasizing that today is because this election, as of now, is a coin flip. It is incredibly close, and really, they have no idea what will happen, but they say what this hinges on altogether is going to be how many of their supporters actually turn out, those who are not sitting this out, but actually feel motivated enough to go to the polls and try to make a difference. I want to read for you, Kate, what one senior advisor told me, because I think it is telling. He said, quote, "We feel like we're in a position now where if the people who we think are going to turn out for President Trump turn out, then he ought to win. So it's a matter of achieving that. It's close. It's really close." Now, I will say, to get a little bit more specific here, the key things that they are looking at are the core demographics that they have been targeting. First of all, we know a major demographic that they have struggled with, that Donald Trump has tried to court but has not been able to do so well, honestly, is women. And we saw in early voting data that women were far outpacing men when it came to early voting. And so that is one challenge that they recognize is they are presented with today. However, they argue that male Democrats in specifically are maybe not turning out for Harris in the way that they had initially anticipated. They said that is a sign of encouragement. So that's one thing. But one other quick thing I want to bring up, Kate, is that ground game we've seen been an issue with the Trump campaign as well. They have outsourced a lot of that to groups run by Charlie Kirk from Turning Point Action as well, and Elon Musk's PAC. Today is their judgment day, is how Donald Trump's campaign is framing that. So keep an eye on that as we hear, we may hear from Trump today or others. Keep an eye on that as we look through and ahead to when the polls close. Kate?
Absolutely. Elena Train, thank you so much for your continued reporting today. Sarah, send it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Kate Baldwin. Today, we will hear from Vice President Kamala Harris in a series of radio interviews before she heads to her alma mater, Howard University, for tonight's election watch party. That is where we find CNN's Eva McCann. Eva, Harris, of course, hoping that her message of optimism and unity really resonated enough with voters to make her the first woman to ever win the presidency. What are you hearing this morning?
They sure are, Sarah, and that really is indicative of how she has run her entire campaign, trying to cast a wide net, trying to appeal to everyone from the likes of Liz Cheney to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, all under the same umbrella. You saw a big push with country over party, Republicans for Harris, but also not alienating progressive voters by talking about expanding Medicare. And then, of course, remaining disciplined on perhaps the most pressing issue for most Americans, and that is bringing down costs. They hope that a mix of these arguments, as well as talking about preserving democracy, will ultimately win the day. Take a listen to how she closed out her campaign.
We are the promise of America. I see it in the women who refuse to accept a future without reproductive freedom, and in the men who support them. I see it in Republicans who have never voted for a Democrat before, but who put the Constitution of the United States above party.
And listen, the campaign says that they feel confident that they have multiple pathways to 270, but it is important to remain calm throughout this process, as it could take several days to get the results. Sarah?
Eva McCann, I know you also had a conversation with Kamala Harris one-on-one, and a lot of interesting points made there. Thank you so much for your reporting from there on Howard University's campus. John?
Remain calm. Good luck with that. With us now, CNN's David Urban, Jamal Simmons, Kristen Soltis Anderson, and Gloria Borger. So what's new, guys?
Oh, no.
There's this weird sort of cognitive dissonance, which is so little one can do if you work in a campaign or even political journalism today, yet the stakes are so incredibly high, Gloria.
Yeah, you're just waiting for the resolution. You're waiting for something to happen. You're waiting even for one state to be dispositive, and say, okay, Georgia, that's early. Let's see, what does that mean for either candidate, right? I mean, and you're trying to game out how each of them can get to 270 and what's the road to 270. Hers is the blue wall. His is, they both need Pennsylvania. His is Pennsylvania, Georgia, North Carolina. And so it's a tough day because the votes are being cast right now, and you just have to sit back and watch it happen happily.
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 Again, good luck with that. Kristen, you live inside the numbers. What numbers are, and I mean that like positively, what will you be looking for tonight and when?
So there are a couple of counties that I would say keep your eyes on. Bucks County, obviously one that we've already talked about earlier today.
Kate's there.
It's a county that used to be pretty 50-50. I believe went for Biden by about 4 points. It's the kind of place where Trump's going to need to get it back to 50-50, if not win. Keep an eye on that. I am from Florida. I'm keeping an eye on Osceola County, Florida. Now, Florida is not a battleground state, but that is a county that has a very large Puerto Rican population. If you want to see if that Madison Square Garden rally had any effect, maybe that's where you would look. So there are a couple of counties, but the hardest thing for someone in my line of work to do today is don't get swayed by the anecdotes. People are going to say, you know what, there were 3-hour-long lines at this polling place. Gosh, turnout's looking really good. These are anecdotes. They're not data. Keep calm. Wait for the returns.
Early exit polls.
Early exit polls.
Don't be swayed by
tread
those
so carefully.
I live with the anecdotes. The anecdotes are great. You know, I have a county that's sort of like that. Hamilton County in Indiana, not a swing state. Hamilton County went for Trump in 2016 by 20 points. In 2020, it went for Trump by 7 points. This year, there were 34% of voters voted in the primary for Nikki Haley. If Kamala Harris does do well in a place like Hamilton County, where she's peeling away some of those Nikki Haley voters, that could be a sign of a trend across the country of those Haley voters really being positive for her.
Look, the line thing I get with Kristen, you know, I get it every election. I witnessed it myself, participated. I got suckered in at one point in time, right? You go and people, this is the longest line I've ever seen in my entire lifetime, David. And then we lose the precinct, we lose the ward, right? We lose the county. So don't be swayed. People are sending me pictures of their lines and their polling places and said, this is a Trump place, let's go, right? And so I'm not going to get sucked in. I do agree with Kristen in early, you know, in Pennsylvania, which is going to be kind of dispositive here tonight. Jamal, we were talking about this off air. You know, Philadelphia County is going to be really important here. What's going to matter is it's going to matter the overall vote, number one, the top line number, but then the net out of Philadelphia County is going to be incredibly important because Kamala Harris needs a giant number out of there, 500,000 roughly votes. 500,000 net votes out of Philadelphia County to be able to carry the state. Biden had a big number. He had 605. Obama had 590. But Trump's been increasing his vote, right, in Philadelphia County. People say, like, back when he went to the sneaker convention in Philadelphia, or he had a rally in downtown Philadelphia in a 100%, you know, Democratic ward, why did he do it? Well, this is why he did it, because tonight, he may end up with 150,000, 160,000 votes out of Philadelphia County, which will eat into Kamala Harris's number. And as you saw, right, and you were chronicling, Erie County, 2,000 vote margin. Bucks County, 2,000 vote margin. This is a game of inches, to paraphrase the great movie, right? This is what game of inches. And tonight, we'll find out who moves the ball 1 inch and another inch, and that's how this victory is going to be achieved.
But John, you know what they're going for is they know that these numbers are going to be tougher out of some of these cities, right? But they also know they're going to have a bigger card to play in some of those collar counties, like where Kate is right now, because there are going to be a lot of women who will vote for Kamala Harris for a variety of reasons. And if they can make the case there, they can actually make up.
But just specifically, real quick on Bucks County, I want to step on you. On Bucks County, right? So Clinton won narrowly. Biden increased his lead. But in the past 4 years, guess what's happened? Republicans have flipped Bucks County. Now the registration favors. It was a 20,000 net Democratic favorite in 20. Now Republicans are up by a couple thousand votes. So that's going to be incredibly interesting.
Well, this whole race, though, has been about cherry-picking voters. It's all about cherry-picking. Do you go for women? Do you go for older women? We saw that in the Iowa poll, that older women went, you know, overwhelmingly by, 2-to-1 margin for Kamala Harris. Do you go for young men? Because they're, you know, that's who Donald Trump has been trying to appeal to. They're low-propensity voters. Will they decide to vote this time?
Hang on 1 second. J.D. Vance is voting in Cincinnati. I believe he's speaking. Let's listen.
My wife, and we also, for all the locals out there, we voted for Bernie Moreno for the United States Senate. And if you want the policies of Donald J. Trump in the United States Senate, then Bernie Moreno is the only candidate in this race who I think is the candidate of peace and prosperity for the United States Senate. So I hope people will get President Trump over the finish line. I hope people here in Ohio will get Bernie Moreno over the finish line. Look, I feel good. You never know until you know, but I feel good about this race. I felt good about my own race a couple of years ago when I voted in this exact same spot. Hopefully it goes as well for President Trump and me as it went for me a couple of years ago in the state of Ohio. So I appreciate you guys being here. Happy to take a few questions. You obviously can see my kids bouncing around here. There's Usha. And, we'll take a few questions, but we're going to hit the road, go back home, and then head off to Palm Beach.
Senator, regardless of the results tonight, half the country probably won't be satisfied with the results.
Sure.
What's your message to them, potentially your supporters, if it doesn't go the way that they wanted it to?
Well, look, I think our message is, first of all, we do expect to win, but obviously no matter who wins, half the country, as you said, is going to be at least partially disappointed. I think my attitude is the best way to heal the rift in the country is to try to govern the country as well
All
as
right,
we
J.D.
can.
Vance there in Cincinnati voting, saying what almost any candidate would say no matter what party when they cast a vote.
I feel good.
I feel good. I think we're going to win. That's what you say. Two interesting things that have happened. One is that there are diametrically opposed theories of the case here in this election. On the one hand, Kamala Harris, since she got in this race, has been trying to appeal to women voters, and I also maybe think disaffected Republicans, Donald Trump, to maybe young men in the male vote there. Someone may be right, someone may be very, very wrong here. That's one, Kristen. The second thing here is in the closing arguments, there's strange alignment, right? Donald Trump kind of saying ridiculous things, Kamala Harris saying, look at Donald Trump say ridiculous things. They have the same closing message.
Yeah, right now this is going to be a question of, is this election a reboot or a realignment? In the reboot, you have Kamala Harris put together the Obama coalition plus a few more women. She turns out younger voters for her. She puts back together large numbers of black voters, Latino voters, and she reassembles that group and she wins. But the realignment is very possible. Donald Trump doing better among, say, young men, Donald Trump doing better among Latino voters. And suddenly you see things like education and gender become the big dividing lines rather than age and race. We don't know which way it's going to go, but whether it's a reboot or a realignment will tell us a lot about who's likely to win.
John, I was just going to say, this morning we saw Randy Kaye talk to this young Puerto Rican voter, female voter in Florida. Now she's in Florida, right? Randy Kaye asked her who she's voting for. First-time women Puerto Rican voter, Donald Trump. Shocking. Last night in the city of Pittsburgh, at this rally Trump had, in the front row there to support President Trump, Roberto Clemente's son, the saint of San Juan, Puerto Rico, one of the most famous Pittsburgh sports figures, and on the podium endorsing Donald Trump full-throatedly, Jim Brown's granddaughter, football icon legend, African American. So to the point made, this coalition that Trump's building is not just white guys without a college degree anymore.
But the flip side of that is the suburban, affluent Bucks County voters that Kay talked to, who would have been a Republican 20 years ago.
Absolutely, but the coalition that Trump has put together is a realignment in politics generally.
But it's easy to get anecdotal on Election Day because there are people standing in line and you want to talk to them, and we do.
And what do? La 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 la. Wait till the votes close. All right, David Herman, Jamal Simmons, Kristen Holton Sanderson, Gloria Borger, great to see you all. All right, words of warning from the district attorney in Philadelphia to anyone threatening to interfere with the election. And Boston, Massachusetts, where 20 years ago, the Boston Red Sox won their first World Series. Today they're voting there. Stay with us. This is our special live coverage. It is Election Day in America.
Going all out in Pennsylvania. Both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump spent their final day of the campaign speaking to voters in the Commonwealth. Now the question is, which candidate will win the biggest prize of the battleground states, which is Pennsylvania's 19 electoral votes, which is why we are here in Pennsylvania for Election Day. One place that will play a big role in deciding that. The biggest and most populous city in the Commonwealth, Philadelphia. Joining us right now is Philadelphia's Republican City Commissioner, Seth Bluestein. Seth, thank you so much for coming on. This is a big day for you all, that it came with a ton of preparation leading up to today. How are things going so far? Are you hearing about any issues?
Thanks for having me, Kate. Everything's looking pretty good so far. It looks like a normal, typical election day.
I mean, and could you ask for anything more than that? Absolutely not. Then tonight, after polls close, that's when the real action begins, we have to say, because we know that when it comes to Philadelphia and how Philadelphia, in counting in Philadelphia, the pace of counting and bringing together all of the votes in Philadelphia was the focus of the world back in 2020. How have things changed? Is Philadelphia going to count faster in 2024?
Yeah, we started pre-canvassing our mail ballots as soon as the polls opened at 7 a.m. today, and we're going to count the ballots much faster than we did in 2020. First is our voters a lot of them have transitioned back to voting in person at the polling places. So there will be fewer mail ballots to count this year than there were in 2020. We've also purchased additional ballot extraction equipment to open up the envelopes quicker, and we have more people working than we've had in the past.
All of that adding up to Philadelphia is set to count faster than it did last time. Seth, we're not in the game of betting, that is for sure. But given the equipment and the manpower that you've been able to add to the process, do you think there is a chance that people will wake up tomorrow with a final word out of Philadelphia?
Well, ultimately, whether or not a race can be called comes down to the margin of the election. So it's hard to predict when people will be able to wake up and know the result out of Pennsylvania. But what I can say is it won't take 4 days until the Saturday after the election for us to count the bulk of the mail ballots. That will be done much quicker, hopefully, if everything continues to go smoothly, by the middle of the day on Wednesday.
Which, you were in the middle of it on the floor in that convention center in 2020, and I was the one hounding you standing outside the convention center in 2020. That is a huge improvement in pace for everyone out there who's tracking and doesn't remember what all went down last cycle. Talk to me about what is known so far about mail-in ballots this time around. I mean, I know it's fewer than in 2020, but who is voting by mail-in?
The mail-in ballots in Philadelphia are still predominantly Democratic registered voters. The Republican voters did make an effort to vote by mail, so they didn't go down by the same percentage as the Democratic voters did. But we'll have to see if those voters are coming out and voting in person at the polling places, or if turnout is going to be down a little bit from 2020. We won't know that until the end of the night.
Yeah, is there any expectation that turnout, just overall total turnout, will be bigger than we saw in 2020?
It's really hard to predict this early in the election day. If you're basing it just off of the mail ballot numbers, we wouldn't think so. But again, it's possible that those voters really want to vote in person now that we're not in a pandemic environment. So we'll have to see towards the end of the night, how those numbers are lining up.
And Seth, just finally, it was those days in between when polls closed and there was a final word out of Philadelphia that allowed for conspiracy theories to be born and for people to stoke fears in the process of what was happening in that lag time. What is your message to anyone who is already suggested that cheating has occurred or wants to call into question the integrity and the security around the voting and the counting and the process in Philadelphia this time?
The election in Philadelphia and across the Commonwealth is going to be free and fair and safe and secure. I am completely confident in our ability to run the elections fairly, and all of our voters' ballots are going to be counted. They're going to be counted accurately, and every single eligible voter is going to have the opportunity to have their voice heard by the close of polls at 8 p.m. today.
Seth Bluestein, the man who is going to be in the middle of it all. Once again, thank you so much, Commissioner, for coming on. We really appreciate your time. Good luck today. I'm going to head it back over to Sarah in Wisconsin.
All right. Thank you so much, Kate. Joining me now to discuss is Washington County Clerk Ashley Reichert. Thank you so much for being here this morning. What are you seeing and experiencing there in Washington County this morning, and when it comes to absentee voting, which has been off the charts, it seems?
Right. It definitely has been off the charts, especially for Washington County. We have roughly 57% on average turnout for absentee voting. Some communities are averaging over 60%, which is something unheard of, even surpassing 2020, which is absolutely fantastic. And for us, we actually made initiatives earlier this year to promote election integrity. One of our initiatives was funding extra extended hours for municipalities to offer in-person absentee voting hours in the evenings or weekends. And our clerks are absolutely amazing. Every single municipality participated, and they actually added over 300 additional hours of in-person absentee voting, which definitely can contribute to the increased turnout for us.
Can you give us some sense of whether or not you think this will be a historic number of people voting, and whether or not you think that the blue wall will stand or will crumble?
So in Washington County, I think we'll definitely have record-breaking turnout. And I think even in the state of Wisconsin, we're seeing record-breaking turnout for this election. More people engaged as election inspectors, engaged as poll watchers, which is all absolutely fantastic to see individuals get involved in the election process and learn how it works in the state of Wisconsin. I definitely think we'll have a high conservative turnout, and so we'll have to see after the polls close what that means for the state of Wisconsin.
Ashley, thank you so much for joining us this morning and sort of giving us a look into a very important county here, Washington County, Wisconsin. I appreciate that. I am now going to bring in a first-time voter. She came with her mom, mother and daughter. There's Ella. Come over and visit me. And this is Ella, and this is Celeste. You are both here. First of all, what made you decide to vote for the very first time in 2024?
I think women's rights are very important, especially for being a biracial African American. I stand for everyone behind me. This is for women's rights, and I think it's important. So let's win. Let's do this. My mom raised me very well, and this is really important.
What has this been like for you? I see you getting emotional. What is it like for you to come in here with your daughter side by side and vote together here in Cedarburg?
It's an incredibly spectacular thing. It's the first time in the history of our country that she's being able to vote for a woman, and not just a woman, but one that looks like her. And I think that's an incredibly emotional thing. I think the reality of it didn't set in until this morning when we were getting ready to walk out the door, but it's a phenomenal, it's a historic moment. I think in particular in consideration of the election and just how decisive it's been and how, well, I mean, it's a little chaotic, right? It hasn't been clean and friendly, and I'm not okay. I'm quite overwhelmed and also incredibly proud.
Yeah, you said it's been chaotic. It certainly has not been Wisconsin nice. We can all agree on that.
I don't know if it's been nice anywhere at all, has it?
Can you give me a sense of, for you, compared to 2020, what your feelings are? And obviously you're here with your daughter. This place votes like almost none other. It's about 90% of registered voters come in and do their duty. For you, how important was it to show up today?
I think it's always important to show up for all of our elections. This one in particular, it was incredibly important for me. Again, I think just because of this moment I'm sharing with Ella, and it's also historically significant. And as she said before, we're both big women's rights advocates, and we believe in just the power of regular people. And, we've talked about this quite a great deal, and how we just need to kind of go in the direction or pick that person that aligns most with the life that we're trying to go towards. And so it was just a clear, I think, decision for both of us as women, young women and old women alike.
Girl, you ain't old. You look great. Celeste, Ella, thank you so much for sharing your stories with us. Absolutely. And congratulations on your very first time voting. Appreciate you both.
Thank you so much.
All right, have a great day. So you heard there are people clapping for them just because they came out, they voted, and they're very proud to see another member of the city of Cedarburg out here voting. All right, Michigan, of course, is another one of the important swing states up for grabs. We will take you there live to see how the voting is going there this morning. And take a look at this line of people waiting to hand in their absentee ballots just outside of Atlanta. Election day in America, my friends, is off to the races.
All right, welcome back. You're taking a live look right now of two polling sites in America today. Grand Rapids, Michigan, they are voting. Boston, Mass, voting as well. And we're also going to show you a live look at Atlanta, Georgia, and Wilmington, North Carolina. Voting happening across the map, north, south, east, west. Voting is happening. The polls are open. And right now, voters are lining up at polls across Michigan, as we just showing you Grand Rapids. One in Michigan is one of the 7 battleground states that will decide who becomes the 47th president of the United States. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says that she is hopeful that Election Day in Michigan will be peaceful, but that officials are prepared for anything. CNN's Kylie Atwood is joining us now from a polling site in Grand Rapids. We're keeping an eye on it all. Kylie, what are you seeing? What are you hearing? And what are officials telling you?
Well, listen, last night, Jocelyn Benson said that she expects to see the unofficial results here in Michigan by midday tomorrow, if not sooner, expressing optimism that this state is going to be able to swiftly produce the results statewide. And one key reason for that is because they're now allowing pre-processing of those mail-in absentee ballots up to 8 days before Election Day. So that takes off some of the pressure, some of the work that the county clerks are going to have to do tonight. We just got an update from her office. 3.3 million voters in Michigan cast their ballots before Election Day. That makes up 48% of registered voters in the state. That's a pretty big chunk, Kate. But we should also note that voting is happening here today. I want you to listen to two voters that we spoke with here at this church in Kent County, Michigan, who told us why they're voting for Harris and why they're voting for Trump.
Who'd you cast a ballot for today?
For Donald Trump.
What's your reason?
I think I just believe in his values.
Which ones?
Mainly all of them. I don't agree with how he comes across at times, but I think he gets the job done. I think he did it before, and I believe he could do it again. I do.
Who'd you vote for today?
I voted for Kamala Harris.
Why is that?
I have 3 daughters, 4 children overall, and women's rights is pretty important to them and my daughters. Sorry, I'm getting a little emotional about that. I didn't think that I was going to do that, but just their bodies, their choice type of a mentality. I want them to grow up in a world that's welcoming to everybody. So yeah, that's why I cast my vote today.
Now, Kate, here at Brookside Church, just 8 miles south of Grand Rapids, Michigan, I want to show you what we're seeing here. These are voters who are checking their information with the clerks. They're then getting their ballots, and then they are going over to cast their ballots and put them in the tabulator. It's a process that really only takes a few minutes. Lines here haven't been really long today, as far as we have seen. Obviously, we know that a lot of people in Michigan cast their ballots early. That could be one of the reasons for that, but we'll continue to watch what happens here in Kent County, particularly because it is a county that both the Harris and Trump campaigns are watching closely. It was one that Trump won in 2016, that Biden won in 2020, mirroring the results across Michigan. Kate?
Another critical county in that critical state. Great to have you there, Kylie. Thank you so much in Grand Rapids, Michigan. John, I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, it's just so great to see what was happening there in Grand Rapids behind Kylie. The process at work there as it is across the entire country. Now, the first swing state where the polls close is Georgia. It happens at 7 p.m. With us now is the former mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Lance Bottoms, also a senior advisor now for the Harris-Walz campaign. Mayor, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
What's the vibe in Georgia?
You know, people are excited. A lot of people voted early. Nearly half of the eligible voters voted early. We are close to passing those 2020 numbers. But I think in Georgia and across this country, people are ready for this election to be over, and we are ready to move on as a country. And we've heard that in the closing messages from the vice president.
I guess there's no real way of knowing, but 4 years ago, Georgia wasn't actually called. We weren't able to project a winner until after we projected the winner of the presidential race. It took a long time. You feel like it will take this long in Georgia this time?
I don't think it's going to take that long, and the Secretary of State has been very adamant in making sure that the elections run smoothly. Although, as I was sitting here, I got a text from a friend who said her polling place has been evacuated because of bomb threat, which is really unfortunate. But there's been this elections board in Georgia that's tried to call for a hand count of millions of votes, et cetera. And at each turn, the Secretary of State has pushed back. So early voting went very smoothly, and I expect that we're going to get results early from Georgia.
And again, we've heard there have been stories like that about polling places, about threats being called, and we're trying to track them down right now. Hopefully, it'll turn out to be nothing, and people can get back and cast their votes as necessary. Fulton County, Atlanta, where you were mayor, turned out in just huge numbers for President Biden 4 years ago.
There had been a sense up until the final weeks of this campaign that maybe Vice President Harris wasn't getting the numbers she needed to in some of these urban centers. What changed or didn't change in regards to that in the closing days?
Well, you know, the vice president has been to Georgia, I lost count, somewhere around 25 times. So she's probably closer to 30 times during the entire time that she's been vice president. She was just there a couple of days ago. So she is pushing hard in our state. We know the vice president. She has very close personal ties in Georgia. But on top of that, she's really leaned into making sure that people in our state know her, know what she stands for, how she has delivered for our state, and I think that's going to pay off.
You know, since 2020, there have been Republicans who've won in Georgia, there have been Democrats who've won in Georgia statewide. Has anything really changed over 4 years that might point in a certain direction?
Well, I'll just remind you, Trump has not done well in Georgia. He lost Georgia in 20. We sent Senator Ossoff and Warnock to the Senate,
twice.
And then Warnock back again. And Donald Trump backed the other candidate. He backed the other candidate in the governor's race who didn't win. So he doesn't do well in Georgia. But again, as we remind people what's at stake here, I believe that people will support Vice President Harris, and she's done a great job. She's done all that she can do. We've knocked on more than 1.5 million doors in the state of Georgia. People are still phone banking and knocking on doors as we speak, and she's been there to make the case for herself.
Just a few hours to go. Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, great to see you in person. Thank you very much.
You.
Kate.
All right, we're going to show you live pictures of Burke, Virginia, a suburb of the nation's capital. You see people heading in to vote. We're going to have many more live pictures for you as we are watching people turning out across the country to have their voice and their vote heard. Also this, some of Donald Trump's final message and mood just before Election Day. You saw last night, it was dark, even revisiting his old grudge with Nancy Pelosi. What that message means today. We'll be back.
All right. Thank you for joining me back here again in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. It is a picturesque town where people vote in large numbers. They're expecting potentially about 95% of registered voters to come and vote in this city. It is, of course, a town in one of the blue wall states, or so-called, so we're paying very close attention to what is happening here. This is one of the states Trump won in 2016, then Biden flipped in 2020. And in Cedarburg alone, they had not voted Democrat until 2020. They had always voted Republican back to 1936. So we are watching this very closely as a potential harbinger of what's to come for the entire state. Joining me now, Chairman of the Wisconsin Republican Party, Brian Schimming. Thank you so much. We've seen the crowds come in. People are very enthusiastic, especially here in Cedarburg. What are your hopes and worries today when it comes to your candidate?
Well, a lot of it for us, Wisconsin's not a party registration state. We're one of the few, I think, that aren't. And so we've been pushing very big early vote campaign for the past 2 years. We saw a pretty substantial early vote throughout the state of Wisconsin. Not as big as you saw 4 years ago because we were in the pandemic, but still larger in Republican areas than I think a lot of people anticipated. So we're encouraged about that. But the truth of the matter is, and the reason I've pushed early vote traditionally the last 2 years is Republicans, and I've been blunt about it and outspoken about it, Republicans can't keep going into Election Day 100,000 votes behind and expect to make it up in 13 hours. It's just simple in my mind, simple arithmetic. So the truth of it is we're seeing big turnout, early turnout throughout the state on mail-in and early vote. I'm hearing anecdotally pretty big turnout from around the state. I've been traveling. I was with the president twice last week. I was with J.D. Vance yesterday in La Crosse. So we feel good, but we've had 12 races in 24. This gives you an idea about why we're a blue wall state. We've had 12 races in 24 years in Wisconsin that have been decided by less than 30,000 votes. So turnout's important.
In 2020, it was 20,000 plus votes.
Right.
I do want to quickly mention we just heard from one of the tabulators that one of the machines is down. They are fixing it as fast as they can, but they have two machines here, so people will just have to wait a little bit longer. So we should mention that. I do want to talk to you about Donald Trump. He is again sowing this doubt that there is going to be tampering with this election. Do you share that concern with him when it comes to Wisconsin? Because I know there's like a 42-step process just to count the absentee ballots here.
Yeah, Wisconsin, we don't actually have voting machines here. We have tabulators, as he mentioned, so they literally count the paper ballots statewide. One of the things that we did at the State Republican Party here, we put 6,000 poll workers together. In Wisconsin, you have to recruit poll workers the year before. So we recruited almost 6,000 poll workers across the state, and there are a lot of them that are shifted out, thousands of them today. Also thousands of poll watchers who people literally watch and observe, and a couple hundred lawyers. So we're in much better position, I think, than we were in 2000 or 2022 to ensure that it's a safe election in Wisconsin. That's my focus. I've done some statewide recounts. I don't want to do another one, and we will if we have to. But really, our focus is making sure the process is open and transparent, and there are records there. If we have all of that, I don't have the concerns that some do.
You were not charged, but you were named in the Georgia indictment when it comes to trying to bring fake electors to mess with the election. Is that going to happen again this time?
The only reason that so the issue with the electors is separate than what's going on today. I'm confident about the process that we've got here. I really am. I know lots of clerks statewide. Wisconsin is very local. Election oriented. We have over 1,850 polling places across the state.
And they count them in each polling place,
and
so they don't go anywhere.
Each polling places. You do have several counties, about 36 or so, that have central count that the clerks use for their efficiency more than anything else. But I've always said I'm more comfortable in the result if the process is open, if places like this can be observed by our observers, and that we're in the room when the count is done. If I have those three factors, I feel a lot better. But you know, close elections tend to get recounts. I've been involved in some before, as have the Democrats, so we've both had that issue.
We have seen it before, and everyone's hoping we won't see it this time. Thank you so much, Brian Schimming. I really appreciate you coming in and hanging out with me here in Cedarburg, Wisconsin. It's a great town.
Wisconsin.
Thank you. All right, back to you, John.
All right, we are standing by as the in-person polls are about to open out west in several states, including the key battleground of Nevada. Polls open almost everywhere. Our reporters on the ground almost everywhere. Let's start with CNN's Miguel Marquez in Wilmington, North Carolina. Miguel.
Long lines here, John, all day long. 6:30 the polls open here. This is the shortest we've seen them so far, but election officials expecting much, much more out in the parking lot. Lots of energy out here. The Democrats have a tent out here. Republicans have a tent out here. Lots of signs and lots of information for voters as they go in to vote. Officials inside say they expect it to be busy all day long, despite the fact that most people have already voted early.
Well, I'm here in Fairfax, Virginia, and also seeing a steady flow of voters coming out here. They are being met by both sides, Fairfax Democrats and Fairfax Republicans, as they head in to cast their ballot. I've spoken to many Harris supporters, but I've also spoken to several Trump supporters. And when you talk to the Harris supporters, they say abortion and democracy are their top issues. When you talk to the Trump supporters, they say economy and immigration. But they're all here, high energy, but also stress levels high.
And I'm Isabel Rosales in Atlanta as we enter this third hour of Election Day voting. At this particular polling site, all smooth, no line. The longest we saw this was just after polls opened with about 20 people back. Right now, very good, all smooth. I did speak to the first person in line who said she wasn't sure if she was going to vote, but ultimately decided to do that. And her one reason for doing it, reproductive rights.
All right, Isabel Rosales out there in the field. Kate Baldwin, to you.
Oh, to me? Oh, well, hello. We're in Pennsylvania. This is the, I don't know why I was surprised. But we've been at Ben Salem High School all morning meeting with voters. We've met with Trump voters. We have met with Harris voters, which is fitting because Bucks County, where we are, is one of those critical swing counties in Pennsylvania, that how Bucks County go could say a lot about how Pennsylvania is going to go with its big prize of 19 electoral votes this time. We'll be here all day.
All right, Kate,
John
Sarah in
and
Wisconsin,
Sarah.
our thanks to you. Thank you all for joining us. CNN's special coverage of Election Day in America continues.